Are we good?
Yeah, he's ready.
All right, good evening. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of May 27th, 2025 to order. Would you please join the board and me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Clerk Scarpaniti, would you please call the roll?
Trustee Jane.
Here.
Trustee Manzo.
Present.
Trustee Nagel.
Here.
President Herman.
Here. So we have a quorum. We have two trustees participating remotely this evening.
We're missing Trustee Reddy.
He's also away, and since we only can have two remote participants, he was the last one to register for that, so he'll not be participating.
Okay.
All right? So
He's absent.
he's absent, okay. So Trustee Tazinga, are you on?
Yes, I'm present.
Would you please state your reason for remote participation?
Yes, I'm out of town on business.
Thank you. Trustee Martin, are you on?
I am.
Can you please state your reason for remote participation?
I am also out of town on business.
All right. And she really, even though she's in Italy, it's really business. So,
It is.
it's 2 a.m, so thank you for participating at 2 a.m. Hey, before we begin tonight, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the passing of longtime Oak Brook resident Thomas Doyle, who left us on April 22nd at the age of 86. Tom was a dedicated former Catholic priest, and for many years he served on our Plan Commission from 2010 until its dissolution in 2023. He was also active and a valued member of several community organizations, including the Friends of the Oak Brook Public Library, the Graw Mill Board, and LaGrange Soup Kitchen. Tom was also my neighbor for many years when I lived in Robin Hood Ranch, just 2 doors down the road from him. His contributions touched many lives, and his impact on our community will be felt for years to come. Moving on, as I announced at the April 22nd Village Board meeting, the village has been officially notified by the Urban and Community Forestry Program that Oak Brook is now recognized as a new Tree City USA community for the first time in our history. This program provides a framework and national recognition for our community regarding our healthy, sustainable urban forestry program in the village. Tree City USA also assists communities with grants for proper urban and community forestry management. The Public Works Department here in Oak Brook has been proactive in continuing the conservationist ethic for which Oak Brook is known through species diversity, tree planting within the village's urban forest, developing tree inventories and management plans, and implementing tree care ordinances. I would like to now briefly turn over the presentation to Public Works Director Tim O'Malley.
Thank you, President Herman. By being engaged in urban forest management, along with participating in the Illinois Tree City USA program, the village is demonstrating our commitment to environmental sustainability while also qualifying the village for grant opportunities. The village will also be recognized for the Illinois Department of Natural Resources for their Growth Award as part of a multiple-year award. Being engaged in urban forestry management helps municipalities more cost-effectively manage their tree resources and provide a safe environment for their residents. I am pleased to present the Tree City USA plaque to President Herman and the Board of Trustees.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you've driven through town recently, you may have seen some of the new Tree City signs throughout the village. Oh, like that. So, thank you very much for that, Tom. Moving on to public comments. I know that from the sign-up sheet, some people have signed up to speak on the Bath and Tennis agenda item. I think there's also speakers on other agenda items. So if you're here to speak on the Bath and Tennis agenda item, that will come later in the active business. You're welcome to come up and speak now on that, but I will also have a second public comment session for that if you choose instead to remain and speak after the presentation and discussion by the board. So it's your choice, speak now, or you can speak following the presentations and the agenda item. So with that, who do we have signed up first?
Kristen Fithab for Blackstone.
Please just state your name. And I just want to remind you before everyone starts, before you start, I just want to remind everyone that speakers are limited to a period of no more than 3 minutes. Persons addressing the board may comment on issues of public interest relating to the operations of the village. While all comments are welcome, we ask for civility and will not tolerate personal attacks on members of this board or village staff. Your 3 minutes are up, are starting. Please announce your name and go ahead.
My name is Kristen Petro, and I'm here on behalf of my clients who would like to build their custom home, but whose plan was rejected for not having enough brick or stone per Oak Brook's recent rule. I've had my interior design firm for 20 years, and I design primarily for new construction and large remodels, and I've worked on many projects in Oak Brook over the years. I spoke last month to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak again against this rule. What makes Oak Brook so unique, more so than I think other nearby suburbs, is the diversity of architectural styles. Oak Brook has amazing custom homes. I'm sure you all know that, of every style. It's a hallmark of Oak Brook, and it shows a community that I think is custom, independent, diverse, and interesting. And designing the new custom Oak Brook homes are some of the most talented and award-winning architects available. These are people who understand design and who respect the design process. And I've pulled together a collection of their work that maybe I can pass on to illustrate the variety of architectural styles available to clients who want to build a custom home, most of which do not include 50% stone and brick. You may not always look at something and understand why you like it, but design professionals know. They understand scale and proportion. They thoughtfully consider a home's cladding, the properties of a material, and how it supports the architectural style of the home. We are trained to not just design for a style we personally like, but to appreciate the design principles and elements that create any style. An arbitrary governmental rule on not just the type of cladding, but a required percentage to be applied takes away some of the most important design tools that we as design professionals use, which allow us to create well-designed and executed homes that will stand the test of time. Brick and stone do not make a better house, and when forced on the wrong style home, makes a much worse one. If this rule continues, you'll have a community with inauthentic homes in various shades of stone and brick, a development so pigeonholed in style that buyers may look elsewhere. Authentic architecture will speak to the quality of the community more than brick and stone will. Grand Victorians, Nantucket, cedar shingle style, classic sided colonials, clean contemporary stucco, modern farmhouse, Cape Cod, modern. If we are being respectful of the historical architectural pedigree of these style homes, you should not demand 50% stone or brick on each side. And I can completely understand and appreciate the trustees' desire to ensure quality homes are built in Oak Brook, but I respectfully ask the committee to consider alternative methods of achieving that will not limit the creativity and expertise of our design professionals. And most importantly, please consider our clients who seek out Oak Brook because of the beautiful lots which give them the opportunity to design and build beautiful homes in a variety of styles. I'm confident other design professionals like myself would be willing to conference with the trustees to learn about your intention with this rule and how we can alter it to be more inclusive to a multitude of architectural styles. Until then, I ask that this rule be dropped to allow my client and others to proceed with the beautiful homes they've designed.
Thank you very
you.
much. Next speaker?
Can I?
Jacqueline Cantori.
Okay.
Okay, Ann Huber.
Hi, folks. My name is Ann Huber. I live in the village. Thomas Jefferson taught that a well-informed citizenry is the best defense against tyranny. We who signed the petition against commercialization of the sports core are well-informed. We think, we read, we question. Village leadership apparently believes the proposed Schick Chef deal will save the OBBT. We do not agree for at least 4 reasons. The first, ignotus quid. We do not know the thing. I've asked to see the audit of CC's operations at the clubhouse. No response. We don't know how many events have been held there over the past 18 months or how much cash they've yielded to the village. Because CC's financial performance is unknown, we do not trust its projections. Number two, we do not want more parking spaces on public land. A new football field of blacktop does not increase our enjoyment of our land. 51 years ago, LBJ pronounced that today we must act to prevent an ugly America. For once the battle is lost, once our natural splendor is destroyed, it can never be recaptured. The third reason, the deed to Sports Corps land requires it be used for public purposes. The library is a public library. The ugly red barn is used by the Public Works Department. Our land is not supposed to be commercialized. Don't put a casino in the barn. Don't put a private banquet hall next to our pool. Fourth, village leadership is using a false dichotomy tactic. It's a classic debate device. Village leadership only gives us two choices. Choice A, close the pool or tennis courts. Nobody wants that. Choice B, lease the clubhouse and gamble on CC. We serfs are supposed to choose that, one of those. But your false dichotomy divides our community. It divides us. It has divided your very own board. There is a third and more excellent way. The village could fund the OBBT itself, as it has for years. Village receipts in the last 3 years are the highest yet. We have 19 months of reserves. Use this money to operate, preserve, and improve the pool and clay tennis. Yes, I know there are pension liabilities imposed on us. Yes, the medians on 83 are not attractive. So what? More restaurants are moving to Oak Brook. We know that the land facing 22nd Street will be rebuilt, and we'll get more cash from that. Larry reported just last week that we have $15 million surplus, and I've put a copy of that presentation up there. We have the money, we have the technology, and we can rebuild a pool and a nicer snack shack. But village leadership does not give us this choice. Shame on them. In sum, the sports core is our land, and it should not be
your time is up.
commercialized. Thank you.
And for the next speakers, I'll remind you, please, no personal attacks on the board.
Jeff. Hank.
Thanks for the opportunity to address the board tonight. I completely respect what it is you do. And, you know, I speak from the heart. I'm not, I'm a developer. I live in Oak Brook. Love this village. And most of you know at 3 minutes, I'm just hitting second gear, so I'm in trouble. But, you know, my feeling is this. I heard about the regulation changes, heard very, very late. And I was extremely concerned because one of the things that's bothered me most probably for the last 6, 7, 8 years is why was Oak Brook trailing our neighboring communities? Why were they on such an upswing? And we basically, homes weren't selling at the rate they should sell at. The prices weren't good. The price of dirt was down. And it really bothered me. And we were talking about it. It was a talking point, like, how are we going to improve this? And, you know, I think that, if there was anything good for us that came out of COVID, it was this resurgence of Oak Brook, because I think people realized the importance of having yards, having extra garages, having swimming pools. People realized that you got to have your own recreational mecca, so to speak, on your own property. So it was really exciting because all of a sudden there was this uptick in excitement, and I saw prices and properties selling as fast as they hit the market, and prices going up, and people were excited, and an absolute exuberance about coming to Oak Brook. And I saw areas around us because I develop in all these areas. But my heart is in Oak Brook. I live here and I office here. And I understand the mentality of the buyers here. And I sit with these folks that bring tremendous money in and buy dirt for, up to, $1.6 million, $1.7 million for a property to tear down. We just had a client over close to $1.1 million to buy a .40 property in Brook Forest to tear down. So you look at this and you go, okay, this is exciting for us. And now what are we going to do? We are putting rules in place, considering rules that in my opinion, are going to halt this tremendous progress. The FAR or the FAR, I don't believe that, in my humble opinion, I respectfully request that we relook at it. We don't include the basements in the FAR, that we allow the garages maybe up to 1,000 square feet to not be counted. This is going to gridlock. Architects are literally not going to be able to design. They're going to have second floors that don't work over first floors. They don't have the room to work. And what you're going to have is pushback from these very people that are bringing all this money into the village. They're going to go elsewhere. I have energy codes to follow. I have all these regulations, state and fed, stormwater. It gets more and more difficult in all these conversations. And we've got other regulations. Please look at the total of structure, what we can put on these properties, the elevations, what you can use. We are not allowing our architects to work and design the kinds of homes that the clients want for this kind of investment in our town. I thank you once again. I know I'm running out of time, but this is all so important. So whether it's building coverage, not being able to put a swimming pool in, not to be able to have a 4-car garage, not to have a circular driveway. When you tell the client, no, you can't have this, you can't have that, no, you can't put a master on the first floor, it won't conform. We go nowhere. And the last thing I want to say, please consider this. The idea of a variation, it's wonderful. You come present your case, but it takes months. And no one's going to buy a property, close on the property, right?
Thank you.
Without knowing if they can get their variation.
Thank you. Thank you for the
Thank you.
comments.
Sorry,
Thanks for
I ran
taking.
over. All right.
You were just getting going, but thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Yeah, and, all right, next.
Elise Gaddis, also Sports Core.
You're going to wait? Okay.
Okay, Joe Cantori. Kathy Pascalides. Bev Taylor.
Good evening. I'm Rob Day, and I'm with the Midwest Club. And when we became notified about this change in the footprint, it kind of caught us off guard. I mean, the Midwest Club has spent probably the last 44 years honing footprints, looking at footprints. I mean, the early years when I was involved with the Midwest Club, our biggest fear then was too small of homes. So in our declaration of covenants, we didn't allow any footprint that was less than 1,500 square foot. Then in 1995, when myself and Larry's father and some others redid all of our declaration of covenants, we then saw that people wanted to build bigger homes. They wanted 3- and 4-car garages. So then we increased footprints to 17.5%. That served us well until probably 2015, when we started to see a direct correlation between our property values and allowable buildable footprints. Midwest Club is unique in the fact that we have 80 acres of common area. So most of the homes benefit from big expanses of common area. My home, for instance, that I had on Court 11, we had 45 feet of common area. So my home, actually, 20% footprint, a little bit less, looked very well accommodated by that huge tract of open space. All the other homes around the Ring Road, the same 45, Court 7, 45. Every home has a minimum of 10 feet in the front of the home that is common area. We do not allow homes to be lined up like city lots in the Midwest Club. They're all placed strategically so they don't look like tin soldiers there. And when we changed it to the 25% in 2016, we saw a dramatic escalation in interest in the club again. Things have been stagnant for many years. All of a sudden, there was this huge interest in homes. Right now, we've got 6 homes that are being built that under this new regulation would not be allowed to be built. And to Hank's point, they were all $1.7 million for the dirt. One of the homes is $7 million final price. The others are in the 5 to 6 range. We're also in the process of our new subdivision annex there in the back. And we've put some preliminary numbers on what we thought these lots would go for. And now in looking at this, it looks like it's going to back that up a bit. So I know that it's well-intentioned. I know some of the backstory of why it was all done. Nothing against that, but I just thought that possibly a community like the Midwest Club, which is very unique with its amount of common area, 1/3 of the green space is common, that we may be able to look at this again. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Next speaker?
Dwight Evans.
No? Okay.
Okay, Don Adler. And Faraz Rahman.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Faraz Rahman, and I am a physician that moved to this community approximately 1 year ago. I thank you for the opportunity to speak. In early June of 2025, my family and I purchased a lot in Oak Brook, which was under 1 acre in size in Ginger Creek, with additional buffer behind it for Highway 88. We wanted to build our family's dream home on this lot. Immediately after closing, we engaged with a renowned architecture firm, Schwartz Lewis Design, to design our dream home. The design was supposed to be completed within a couple of months, but we wanted it to be just right. We took our time. We ended up not finishing design and submitting for permits prior to the rules changes that occurred in October. We wanted to make sure that we had purchased a lot that was big enough to support our family's active lifestyle. We enjoy basketball and swimming. My wife and daughter dressed modestly, and they do not like swimming in public areas, and so I purchased this lot. We sold our home that was paid off in Naperville, Lisle area, and we put all of our liquid money into the lot as well as the architectural design, and we started renting a small home in Brook Forest with this idea in mind. We designed a beautiful home, but one that does not comply with the 50% masonry rules. We also were not able to have basketball and swimming and our home on this large lot due to the rules. And I feel that it is unfair that these rules were put upon us without notice. As I said, I purchased the lot and completed the vast majority of the design before these rules were in place. And it has led to a lot of additional expense and difficulty in trying to conform to these rules. And I am asking the village board to reconsider the enforcement of the rules in my case in particular, due to the fact that we purchased the lot and started the design and almost completed the design before this deadline, which we had no warning about. Our architect was blindsided by these rules and did not know about this. They did not get, a heads up a couple of months in advance that they could have used for us. So I propose that I be exempted from this personally and others in my situation, but also to reconsider these rules for the many reasons that have already been discussed for other residents in the future. I have some images of the proposed house and another house that is an inspiration that shows that you can have a beautiful architectural design without 50% brick or stone on every single side. I can show these images up front if needed, but...
We're out of time, but thank you. I will vouch for the house you modeled after. Faraz came to meet with us and showed me that house about a week ago. I said, boy, that house looks familiar. And it turns out it's my daughter's best friend's house in Clarendon Hills. And it is beautiful. So, any more comments?
We've gone through everybody that has signed up.
All right, so the others want to speak at the math and tennis. We'll have that additional session after that agenda item. So moving on to the approval of the minutes, may I have a motion for the approval of the minutes from the regular Board of Trustees meeting of April 8th, 2025?
Moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any objections? Motion carries. May I have a motion for the approval of the minutes from the regular Board of Trustees meeting of April 22nd, 2025?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any objections? Motion carries. May I have a motion for the approval of the minutes from the regular Board of Trustees meeting of May 13th, 2025?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
objections? Motion carries. May I have a motion for the approval of minutes from the regular executive meeting of April 8th, 2025?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any objections? Motion carries. Would you now please direct your attention to the screen where the consent agenda is displayed? Does any board member wish to have any item removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda and authorize expenditures as presented or amended?
So moved. Second.
Clerk Scarpaniti, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Jane.
Yes.
Trustee Mansell.
Yes.
Trustee Nagel.
Yes.
Trustee Martin.
Yes.
Trustee Tisinga.
Yes.
Motion carries. Moving on to boards and commission recommendations. The first item is for a text amendment, floor area ratio definition for the zoning regulations. May I have a motion for the approval of the text amendment regarding the FAR definition?
So moved.
You have a second?
Second.
Thank you. So I'm going to give just a little bit of background about this item, and then I'm going to turn it over to Development Services Director Vondrasek for more explanation about the details of the text amendment. And this is really an issue. We had some public speakers come up and talk, at least not necessarily directly about this issue, but about the larger issue. And so some background. The board and many residents in this community have articulated to the board over the last several years that they're concerned about, as we pick up the pace of new development in the village, tear-downs and new houses being built, concerns about, let's call it outliers, houses that just were way too big for a given parcel. That caused us at the village, staff level and board level, to start looking at the guidelines we have in place to protect against what I'll call outliers. Outliers, of course, I guess, is a subjective determination. We recognize that unlike a lot of other communities, we didn't really have guidelines. We didn't have FAR limitations. We didn't have lot coverage ratio limitations. What we had was we had setback lines, we had height limitations, and those were really the confines. And even with those confines, it allowed people to build houses that in some lots were too large. So this precipitated a research project where we looked at a lot of other communities to see how they're doing things. That resulted in the board sending a recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission to start studying this. The Planning and Zoning Commission had a series of meetings, very lengthy meetings, very extensive deliberation among those meetings to consider parameters that might be introduced to try and control or limit the outliers. Those recommendations, again, what I consider to be very thoughtful deliberation, came before the board where there was more deliberation, and that resulted in us, 6-9 months ago, a year ago? Okay, passing some new regulations in our zoning code that put some guidelines or some guardrails on what I would call bulk, essentially, of the house. And there are three new metrics that were implemented that had not previously existed. The first was a principal lot coverage ratio. And this is the percentage of the lot that can be covered by the footprint of the house. So if you will, the foundation of the house. That was set at 20% of the lot. And these rules applied to all the different zoning districts because they're all percentages, they're proportional to the lot size. Then there was a second limitation called floor area ratio that was adopted that said that the entire interior square footage of the house could not exceed 40% of the lot. So what that essentially meant is that you could build up to 20% of your lot with your first floor, and then you could have a second floor of the same size. I recognize they're not all the same size. That'd be another 20%, that gives you 40%. And with our height limitation in Oak Brook of 40 feet, that's essentially all you can get anyway as a first and second floor. And then there was a third guideline that was put in place because there has been a proliferation of additional structures and impervious space and accessory structures being built in Oak Brook, things like pools, tennis courts, larger driveways than maybe we've had in the past. And so an additional limitation was adopted that said that the total lot coverage, the 20% of the house, plus all the other pavers and things, pools and so forth, could not exceed 37.5%. At the board level, there was another regulation that was adopted, and that was, you heard someone comment about tonight, that was to say that the exterior face of the house had to be at least 50% stone or brick. The concern being that there not only have been some outliers in terms of the size and bulk of houses in Oak Brook, but frankly, there's been some outliers in terms of construction quality and appearance that is just unacceptable to Oak Brook standards. Not that we want to be in the game of approving architectural review of every house, but that was a line that was set to try and control that. At the time these passed, I know I articulated that we may not have gotten this right. Again, there was an extensive amount of deliberation about this. My belief, and I think the board's belief, was that we had to do something to kind of draw a line to prevent the outliers. I know I said that, you know, if we didn't get this right, we would be open to reconsidering in the future if there was a will for it. And depending on what our boards and planning and zoning board and this village board believed. So the first thing I realized after these regulations were passed is that, again, the 20 and 40% lot coverage in FAR, from the board's perspective, were designed to control the bulk of a house, the bulk being the mass of the house that you see sitting on the lot. It came as a shock to me after these rules were passed that the Oak Brook zoning code, from its inception in 1958, included that even though there was no FAR limitation of 40%, there was a definition of FAR in our code that included the basement space. Now, basement is, if it's truly a basement, it's underground. That doesn't add the bulk. So I know that when of course I didn't vote on it, but when I supported the board's review instead of 40% FAR, to my way of thinking, okay, 20% first floor, 20% the second floor, there's your 40%. But in fact, our code, by definition, included the basement. So you really couldn't build 40% first floor and second floor. I think others on the board were likewise surprised. So the board sent this back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for review again of the definition of floor area ratio, with really the idea that should the basements be excluded from the definition of floor area ratio. And so that led to 2 recent meetings at the Planning and Zoning Commission, again, very extensive deliberations. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to you.
That was a great recap. This evening, what staff needs is direction. Obviously, the Village's Planning and Zoning Commission recommended an FAR of 0.3 with a 50% for only the R3 and R4 districts basements to be included in that calculation rather than the full percentage. So first, we're looking for your direction as to how to finalize the definition of FAR. And then secondly, as in the staff report, you'll note we had discussed kind of this idea that you had individuals who were working with designers in advance of the regulations in October when they were approved. And if the board would like us to work a policy that would allow some of those residents additional time to get their designs through. That said, at some point, the line would be drawn and there won't be any further. So as you deliberate this evening, staff is here to answer any questions you might have about those 2 decisions. And then if there's anything further that the board wants to talk about for some of the other regulations related to lot coverage, masonry, et cetera, we're happy to take that direction.
Thank you. So before we open up discussion, I'll just kind of recap. As I said, the board's directive in going back to the Planning and Zoning Commission was that should the definition of floor area ratio be modified to exclude basements for residential purposes. Again, extensive deliberation, very thoughtful deliberation. What they came back was, well, yes, it should be excluded, but then they lowered or voted to lower the 0.4 to 0.3, which is probably beyond the scope of what I intended for that consideration. I'm anxious to hear what our board has to say, They also limited that to the R3 and R4 districts, which would be many of our districts in some of the older subdivisions like Brook Forest and York Woods, where I know there are a lot of lots that are non-conforming. In other words, the lot sizes are actually smaller than the minimum lot sizes that our zoning code would allow. They kind of pre-existed that. My view is that, as I said earlier, we've put in percentages. Maybe we got the percentages wrong, but percentages are percentages of a lot size. So the larger the lot, no matter what district it is, your lot size percentage, area percentage is going to capture that. So I personally don't understand the logic of limiting our rules or making different rules for an R3 or R4 versus the other districts. I personally don't see the logic in dropping .4 to .3. But that's my thoughts. So with that, is there any trustees who want to jump in on the discussion? Naveen?
I just, this is, obviously, we have a lot of builders and people who have more experience. I don't. But I just want to reflect when we passed this law. I was the only one who opposed, and I think it's on the record, both the 50% brick rule and also the FAR. And I made 2 points. I said, one, from a brick perspective, it just stops the creativity, and we have the diversity of innovation of such sustainable houses and other designs coming up. I even cited my friends' houses, and I'm on record saying that's not the right rule, and I was the only one who opposed it. I just wanted to reflect. Sorry, I just have to point that out. Regarding the FAR, we had a very extensive conversation, and I cited my experience, and I was told we will handle, and my concern was we haven't really vetted with real estate experts and builders who really sell, and it'll affect the value of the house. And I'm on record saying that. And the logic I was given in that discussion was, hey, we can handle through variances. And I explicitly mentioned that I've done work with my clients, and each variance is a huge pain, not only to the clients, but the village staff. And I said variance is not the right way to approach. We should spend the time and do that. So, sorry, reflecting back, I have to refresh that I was on record that this is something that we needed to think through more carefully. And Larry, I agree with you. I think we need to, I don't understand also the changes from 40% to 30% and larger, and I agree with the points you made. So I totally support that that the 50% brick rule I don't think makes sense, and I totally agree that we need to really rethink our FAR.
Thank you. So to be clear, yes, we've had public comment raising issues about some of the other things we passed. As you just noted, what's on the agenda for tonight is the FAR rule, and then we're going to talk about some potential grandfathering relief for people like Faraz who got caught up in the change. And then if this board so desires, we certainly can send a recommendation back to the Planning and Zoning Commission if we'd like them to reconsider some of the other parameters that we had previously put in place. But tonight we're talking about basically the FAR and should the basements be included. So.
I didn't hear what you just said.
Yeah, so tonight's, what's on the agenda for tonight is really limited to whether or not the definition that's in our code now for floor area ratio, which today includes basements, should not include basements for the residential area. I think is it for the residential areas. And you know, as I said, the Planning and Zoning Commission said, no, don't include it, but lower it to 0.3. So, Mike.
Just a couple of things, so there's no confusion. The basement being included in the FAR is not a change. We did not make that change. So when you're referencing changes, that was not a change we made. That's something that's been there since 1958. So my opinion, obviously, is that the basement should not be included in charge against the FAR. If it's a full basement underground, if it's a walkout basement, I think what some communities do is they charge 50% only. I don't like the idea of having different rules for different zones. It should be consistent. And it kind of defeats the purpose if you're going to do that and then lower the FAR number. I think it should remain the same, but that, again, is just my opinion. And for those, and I don't know if they're going to be looking at that, for those that got caught in the middle, perhaps an expedited variance that goes directly to the board to look at it. The problem has been is that these homes that are built, we constantly get phone calls, and these homes that are built lot line to lot line, way too large for the pad that they're on, and we get calls, how did you allow this to get built? And in most cases, if not all of them, we never even saw them. They went straight to permit. and you got a house that looks like a hotel that's built lot line to lot line, and they have a coach house that's built larger than the house. So what this board decided to do was to address that, and we have. And as President Herman said, if there's some changes like this, I think this makes sense. We don't want to add to the bulk, basements do not, and I don't think that should be charged against the FAR.
Trustee Tazinga or Trustee Martin, do you have anything you want to add to the conversation?
I did. I just had a quick question for Director Vondrasek. Are the variance issues that we're dealing with now so painful because people were already in the process? Or is this going to continue to be an issue? If developers know what their the specific rules currently that they're facing, is the process to receive a variance from the beginning going forward going to be smoother than for the existing projects, or will we continue to have this sort of long timeline in terms of variance approval?
So with the combination of the Plan Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals, there was an attempt to streamline the processes. That said, a variation is still a specific action that requests relief from the board and must, by statute, meet certain standards. And what the step that the Planning and Zoning Commission offers is the judgment as to if the standards have been met when they make those recommendations to the board. So there's not much of a method to expedite them through the process. They have to meet those standards to get that review completed.
I would echo that. I'd be reluctant to solve this on a case-by-case basis with exceptions that are based, really need a hardship, right? And if the code is what the code is, it's hard to establish there's a hardship. I recognize that for some of the people that bought not knowing, had already purchased a lot and then got caught up in this, that's a different story. And I want to address that separately in a minute here. Any more discussion on just the definition? Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, President Herman. I agree with Mike. I think, and just so everyone understands what we're talking about, if the lot's 20,000 square feet and your house is 10,000 square feet, there's an FAR of 0.5. And to make sure that we're not mixing apples and oranges, before we get to the FAR, we have to make sure that the definitions of what's in the FAR and what's excluded from the FAR is consistent with the rest of the communities. And there's been instances, and I know Hank brought up an example, but also in commercial space where someone comes in almost everywhere, mechanical rooms, utility closets, hallways, HVAC, electric, gas rooms, mezzanines are excluded. And then they come into Oak Brook and they found out that these were included. And it causes a lot of problems and consternation. So the reason that they're excluded almost universally everywhere else is that these essential building systems don't add to occupancy or leasable spaces. So I think before we do anything, to Larry's point, we have to make sure we all agree on what the definition is. And an acre in Oak Brook has to be an acre everywhere else. And almost everywhere else, these are excluded. And there's reasons they're excluded. If think of it this way, what separates a Class A office building from a Class C office building? We've all been in a beautiful office building, and then you've been in a Class C office building. A Class A office building all has wide hallways, maybe 8 feet. Some Class C offices have 5-foot hallways. If we want to be that luxury town that we promote ourselves in, we shouldn't hinder that and discourage having nice hallways. So that's why almost everywhere the hallways are included. There's also a safety issue involved. You don't want to, when it comes to, like we have a plant or electrical room, I got 483 phase coming in, and next to that I have the gas coming in. You don't want to have that count as FAR, and then what does the developer do? He tries to squeeze 5 pounds of crap into a 1-pound bag, and he creates a dangerous system. And when you look at the reason why we have FAR, it makes no sense to put those areas that nobody's living in into the FAR. So it was unclear to me when I went through the package, Rebecca, but I did a search around DuPage County. Almost universally, all of those areas in the building are excluded.
Trustee Nagel, if I hear you loud and clear. Just to be clear, though, the motion, the topic on the agenda for tonight is the definition around residential zone. This is the residential code. So we certainly can have a discussion at a future meeting about FAR in the commercial districts.
But if you look at the code, Larry, it's the same definitions. There's one set of definitions. If you look at our building code, there's not a different set of definitions
Okay.
for the FAR, just the definitions, not the numbers. So if it's, am I correct?
And only that the building code is different for residential versus the commercial districts. We use the International Building Code for the commercial properties and the residential code for residential properties.
No, but when I looked at the code, I was just looking at just the definitions.
Right. I would agree that the definition within the zoning ordinance for floor area ratio has a caveat for business and office districts, but they are all one and the same definition.
Okay. So what we're talking about.
For residential, is it going to apply?
Okay, fair enough. So we're talking about a definition that, at least for now, excludes basements, and what we have in.
The current definition includes the basement.
Includes basements, and we have
So the
basically a
question
motion
is
to
to
exclude
exclude
basements
it. Yes.
from the definition. And I understand you have other above-ground considerations you'd like to make. You know,
No, but my point is, if you look at our code, Larry, there's one set of definitions.
I understand, but what you're advocating for, I think what you're advocating for is a discussion that it be further expanded to exclude mechanicals, hallways, things like that, that we haven't looked into yet. So I would respectfully ask that we tackle today the basement issue, which by definition would apply to the commercial zone too, because it's a single district, and then we can certainly explore the broader issue.
I thought that on the package they mentioned that too.
On page 2 of the staff report, both the proposed as well as the text recommended by the P and Z is available.
So the P and Z recommended a .3 definition. So.
No. There was another, and I'm just talking, before we get to the numbers, just the definitions. I want to make sure we all have one set of definitions that we all agree on, and there can't be.
Okay, am I correct that the definition is exclude basements from the definition?
The proposed from the village board on February 27th was to exclude the basement of a building measured from the exterior face of the exterior walls or from the center lines of walls separating two buildings. And I'll end there, but it goes on. And when it goes on, it does include all of the areas that Trustee Nagel is referring to that he would like to see excluded from the FAR calculation.
So then let me make a motion to exclude those areas as well. We have one consistent set of definitions for every type of real estate in the village.
I'll second that.
Okay, I see.
For that, but we were recommending covering all residential basements.
Bear with us one second. All right, so what's in the packet does include mechanicals and so forth,
That's the current code.
the current code.
Larry, can I?
Let Greg state what's in the packet, and then we'll.
Yeah, so in an attempt to clarify this, what the P and Z recommended was only to create this carve-out for a couple specific districts. I think the discussion that's being had by President Herman and discussions had among staff is whether to carve it out for all residential districts, separate from commercial districts. I don't believe there's been a proposal, and Rebecca can correct me if I'm wrong, to carve basements out from the commercial district or to modify that mechanical hallways, all those areas that right now are specifically already included.
The carve-out could include, or would be suggested to include, the commercial districts as well. So the definition of floor area ratio currently includes the basement. The direction was to exclude the basements in a building. That said, the argument that was made was that floor area ratio and bulk overall, once under grade, would not add to the floor area of a building.
Right, and the way I've been contemplating this is I think it depends whether you're looking at density or bulk, right? Because those spaces do in fact add bulk if they're above grade. I understand the issue of excluding the basements. But they do add bulk, but they don't necessarily add density, to Trustee Nagel's point, because they're not usable spaces that add to the density. So the question, I think you've fundamentally wrapped your mind around first is, are you trying to regulate bulk or density?
Well, just so we're clear, the vote tonight is for the definitions. We have to have one set of definitions for FAR. There's not one set of definitions for commercial and one set of definitions for residential.
There can be.
Even within
There
the
can be.
Okay,
And there often is in other communities, but there can be. There doesn't have to be.
Even within this definition, there is a call-out for office and business districts that the horizontal area in every story of a building devoted to enclosed off-street parking and off-street loading facilities shall not be included in the floor area. So that is a call-out for the office and business districts within our FAR definition. So the separation of the two would be acceptable. None of the
All out is in the
proposals.
vote tonight?
No.
No,
Trustee Manzo.
that,
Trustee Manzo.
that's where the confusion is. We're not voting on the definition tonight. What we're voting on is giving direction to Rebecca and to the committee on moving forward with this. So you're going to go back and you're going to be drafting a definition. That definition could be for residential and commercial. It could be uniformed, it can be different, but your definition as it relates to basements, correct, Rebecca?
Correct, except for when
So
the
we're
P&Z
not voting on
Commission
any definitions
recommendation.
tonight. We're just voting on giving direction.
Rebecca, please.
I'm very sorry. I just wanted to make sure to note that the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation actually would have further modified other areas of the code to revise the FAR percentage.
And Larry?
To go to point 3.
Correct.
Larry, if I may, could Greg pull some of the neighboring communities and what they do with their FAR as it relates to basements and et cetera?
I'll refer that back to Rebecca Von Drace, because I note that was done for our peer communities. We looked at both whether they include or exclude basements, as well as their percentages that are allowed, but also how they handle lookout or walkout type basements or raised basements. So Rebecca, can you address that?
Absolutely, and it's included in the earlier parts of the package that you have in front of you. And I don't have it electronically in that. For the page number for trustees. But it
Page
is-
number 175.
Thank you, trustee Tisinga. I was going to say it's item E of the case file as well, where it talks about some of the surrounding communities. That said, we were not focused on the ideas of hallways, stairwells, as well as heating and cooling spaces, so. We would have to review that.
Yep. Go ahead.
I just want to clarify, so Trustee Nagel, you're making a motion that we go back to the Planning and Board Commission to first consistently define the FAR before we make those specific decisions, and in the meantime, the people who are in the design phase and everything else go to the old definition till we resolve this? Is that?
I don't think we need to go back to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
No, they already went. My motion that I believe Ed seconded was with the definition that we have one set of definitions of what an FAR is and what the exclusions are.
Right.
And then, depending on the residence or the commercial, you can change the numbers, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7. But before you get to that, we have to have a consistent, uniform definition. In my thought is, it should be the same definition that's almost universally employed in every other municipality in the county, in most places in the country, and they exclude these areas. The vote today, when I read the packet, was the text amendment, floor area ratio definition, zoning regulation. So I make a motion that we have one set of definitions for commercial and residential, and that the FAR excludes elevator shafts, mechanical rooms, utility closets, hallways, HVACs, electrical, gas equipment rooms, and mezzanines. And basements that don't walk out. For instance, not to bring up the Drake, but we have the Koa Hotel. It's the basement. That has to be included because people are occupying that part of the basement as a restaurant, even though it might be considered a basement. So the basements that don't walk out. That's my motion.
Mr. Manzo?
I guess this is a legal question. We can give direction to Rebecca. Are we allowed to make motions? And because it's not on the agenda. What I'm saying is, I guess it's the same thing, but do we just give you direction to look at it? Or do we make motions about items that are not on the agenda? So, or do we just direct Rebecca to look at the definition and it to be all uniform, which is the same, accomplishes the same goal?
So what this evening staff was asking for, there is no ordinance proposed, there's no text written as of yet, so we just need that direction, a vote that gives us the direction, and then we will bring it back to you at the next meeting.
Can I suggest then that you, I know we got two motions on the table, a superseding motion. I would recommend that we go back to you and let you drop some revised text amendments. One that addresses trustee Nagel's concerns, maybe one that doesn't, and let's address it again, come to a vote at the next meeting. Is that fair enough?
And then the only other thing would be the question about the policy, the draft policy.
Yeah, and you also have to put some clarity around walkout basements too. Jim, is that acceptable?
Sure.
Larry, may I, one quick interjection. When it comes back, I think the point that Jim is trying to make and that I completely agree with is that these should be separate votes. So one vote about the definition of FAR is something that we can discuss, but the changes to the lot area requirements, given the new definition, are a separate vote. They shouldn't be combined into a single because then we're mixing kind of apples and oranges in terms of.
I appreciate that, but we already have a .4 FAR. The trouble we're getting into is with the definition. So even though the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended a reduction from .4 to .3, I don't think this board is interested in adopting that. So the .4 would remain. It's just a question of .4 of what? That's the definition of FAR. So.
Just as a procedure, we have a motion on the table, is that correct or no?
We do have a motion on the table, so do you want to withdraw your motion, or?
Yeah, I can second it.
You did second it. Do you want to withdraw that and make a motion to have Rebecca come back with two definitions?
No, I thought it was up for a vote today. I'd like to have discussion and vote on it.
What are you voting on?
That the definitions of FAR have the same exclusions that the other municipalities have, which, and I agree with Melissa, that I don't think it should be the same. We should have a vote on the definition, which is up today, the floor area ratio definition zoning regulations, and then discuss the numbers in terms of the residential and the commercials, .3, .25, .5, as another vote. To avoid confusion. So my motion is that we.
You made a motion, but restate the motion you made. Are you withdrawing that motion?
No.
Can I strongly urge you to withdraw that motion and for us to have Rebecca go back, work with staff, work with team, and come back at a future meeting with the definition of FAR, or a couple of proposed definitions that we can then vote on, one that encompasses what you're talking about. I don't think we have a really good idea of exactly how we're going to include walkout basements. Is it .5? There's a million different ways to do it. So I think if we try and adopt something tonight, we're going to end up having to come back anyway. So my preference would be to let them study it and let them come back with something. And please feel free in the interim, Jim, to work with Rebecca to make sure that one of the options she comes back with is exactly as you believe it should be. And let's look at that next time. Otherwise, I'm not sure what we're exactly voting on.
No, they've already discussed this at the Zoning and Planning Commission. It's
Did
in the
not dis-
package today. I would prefer to call for a vote on this, that we're going to have the same definitions and the same
But
exclusions.
you've got a motion on the table. I'm not exactly sure what it is. Because you haven't defined walkout basements.
My motion is this. My motion is that the FAR definition exclude elevator shafts, mechanical rooms, utility closets, hallways, HVAC, electric, gas, and equipment rooms, and mezzanines. That's my motion.
Okay.
Larry,
Hang on a second. Let me clarify motion. What does your motion say about basements?
It's silent as to the basements.
okay.
Okay, so what's on the agenda is a discussion about basements. So you have a motion on the table to exclude all those above-ground items, but we haven't tackled the basement issue, which is why we're here.
But that's in the agenda package.
But you just made a motion that doesn't talk about basements.
Well, I think she has to go back because there's an issue with walkout basements.
But that's what I'm saying, but you've made a motion. You seem to be calling for a vote on this.
I am.
So, okay, so trustee Nagel has called for a vote on a definition of floor area ratio that's silent as the basements. So we haven't tackled that, but deals with not including all these above-ground mechanical rooms and hallways and things like that.
Is the motion to give Rebecca direction? Because we cannot vote on the definition of FAR tonight. So is the motion to give direction because nothing has been written? So it's coming back, my understanding is giving input to Rebecca, then Rebecca brings it back, and then we vote on the definition of FAR. I think that's where the confusion's coming.
Correct.
What Rebecca is looking for, and what this item says is give her input so she can come back with a definition. At that time, then the board can modify it, make changes, agree to it. But tonight's item, very simply put, is to give our staff the direction to create a definition, and then at that time, we vote on it. Am I correct, Rebecca? Or?
Yeah, Trustee Manzo, I view this very much as like a straw poll on certain elements of this. I'm hearing consensus built around keeping the .4. There's this question about mechanicals, stairwells, hallways as another question. And then there should basements be included, not included, or perhaps included at a .5. Those seem to be the three elements. So if the board wanted to provide direction on those three elements, staff could go back and draft something and perhaps draft even an alternate for the next meeting if there's a split.
Which is what I'm suggesting. Come back with a couple of proposed text amendments. I think we all agree on the .4, right, for residential zones. Come back with a definition of FAR, one that excludes basements from the calculation but has some provision for walkout basements. You'll come back with some, I'm sure, well-crafted language for that, and then come back with an alternative that addresses Trustee Nagel's concerns.
There is the one additional element if the board wanted to provide any feedback on, and that is the grandfathering provision. I think what's proposed in the staff report
Right, I want to...
is anyone who purchased their home within 18 months of the regulation being passed and starts their home within 18 months of the regulation being passed.
I want to tackle that, but can we get some clarity on what Rebecca's going back to do on the FAR issue?
So I'm going to present you next at the June 10th meeting.
Alternative text amendments.
With a text amendment that has the motion as presented by trustee Nagel, as well as the original that the board presented. Should I bring back the P&Z Commission's proposal verbatim? Because they had moved it to the .3. So it sounds like the consensus is to stay at the .4.
Yes, because I think we have to dispose of that anyway, don't we?
Yep, so.
Right.
And exclude the basements.
You'll come back with the
and consider the
recommendation,
0.5.
then two alternatives.
So, just to clarify from my perspective, I think the board, from what I understand, is giving specific direction to the motion saying the FAR definition should be consistent with other municipalities,
Yes.
which includes things like what Trustee Nagel talked about. And I think that direction is what you're saying the board should give, right? That's question number one. Are we giving you that direction? Right?
And I think that it's important that the P and Z Commission understand that they have this opportunity to also discuss, because the proposal that trustee Nagel has put forth, it should be considered then for the bulk that you could be adding to your commercial districts that has not been discussed at the P and Z level. That said, I will bring the definition as I believe trustee Nagel has verbalized it and allow you to vote on that.
Okay. So we got an active motion on the table. How do you want to do this?
Well, trustee Nagel.
Use the mic.
I was talking right now. Trustee Nagel.
Yes.
So you have a motion and a second on the table, but this is a discussion item. Would you withdraw that motion and then
Yes.
give that direction to the director to move forward?
All right.
Okay.
All right. So the motion's been withdrawn. We've given direction. Are we free to move on?
Yes.
Okay. The next item that Village Manager Summers raised, which also was, I think, in the agenda packet, is you have an example such as we heard in public comment from Faraz, that we have people in this village that purchased homes, started engaging, even perhaps engaging with architects and designers and contractors, but had not yet come to the village with an application for a building permit, who got caught up in these rule changes and have been arguably unfairly caught up in that, and would be cumbersome and probably unfair, in my opinion, to put them through a variation process. So the thought process was, do we introduce some kind of retroactive grandfathering relief? I think the suggestion was, I'm not sure it was in the packet, we talked about 12 to 18 months. In other words, if you purchased a home within 18 months prior to us having passed these new rules, then as long as you start construction with 18 months following, then you're grandfathered. Is that accurate? All right. May I have a motion for that relief?
I second.
We need a motion. You want to make the motion? I just pronounced what it is. I'm
The
making
idea is, the motion is we should grandfather houses purchased 18 months
prior to the rule change,
to passing the rules.
provided that they commence or file a building permit or commence construction.
I had it, I think, written as 12 months of construction from the date of the adopted regulations, so that would be prior to October 2025.
Right. I would suggest 18 months, just because we've already had at least 6 months go by and people have been in limbo.
That's fine, I will revise the draft policy.
Yeah. A quick question. Would that cover most of these issues and variances you have on the table right now?
Many of them this evening, yes, including the next item on the agenda for discussion.
All right, so I guess the motion I'm asking you to make is that we introduce grandfathering relief.
I'll move.
Okay.
I'll move the motion.
18 months prior, 18 months after.
I want to discuss it. If you can't put a motion, you can't discuss it.
I'm trying to get a motion, okay.
Okay.
Second? Okay, Mike.
So is this going to be looked at as a blanket immunity? Is the board, because the whole purpose was for us at the board level, and I know this has been an issue with that too, and I agree with him, about us taking a look at these. Is this something now, for 18 months, we're not going to look at any of the construction that goes on? None of it is going to come to the village board?
Yes.
Okay, then I can't support it.
Okay.
I have a question.
Trustee Tizinger, go ahead.
Yes, in light of the prior discussion, looking very strictly at exactly what's on the agenda, I'm looking at my packet and my agenda. Can someone direct me to where this matter is placed on the agenda for action?
Trustee DeSinga, it's on for direction, not for specific action. So staff is looking for direction on these elements, the ones that I articulated earlier, for the purpose of preparing the final draft, which would come back at a future meeting.
Okay, but what page of the packet is this direction item on our agenda about the grandfathering?
So this is, trustee Tizinga, this is Rebecca. It's on page probably 4 is the draft, as well as following discussions of the P&Z Commission recommendation with board members. Staff had begun drafting this language to include a portion of the basement. And then in addition, staff prepared a draft policy.
Okay, but I'm looking at the agenda on page 4, there's nothing. Could you tell me which PDF page it is on the agenda that the trustees used to prepare for the meeting? Because I noticed some very sharp parliamentary practice with trustee Nagel, and I want to find out where is the exact agenda item for a grandfather clause, just for my knowledge of how these rules are working at these meetings.
Hey, Ed, I was looking at the package, and there is a specific document which says draft ordinance language, temporary relief for pre-existing design efforts.
Can you tell me where that is?
It's on the agenda item. It's the second attachment.
Yeah, in the second attachment on the agenda item.
So is that PDF page 161, right around there?
That's a question.
We're looking at the civic clerk, so we're not looking at a continuous PDF.
Okay.
Right, it's
That's one
also
problem with the new
effectively within
system.
this.
There's no one way to really navigate around 700 pages during a meeting.
Okay, it's in the packet, Ed.
Okay, well, it seems like if something generally is up for discussion, there should be some flexibility of action. I think the masonry rule, in fact, got kind of tossed in. That wasn't really on an agenda when we approved the zoning code. So I just make a comment. I think we're being pretty hard on the trustees to say you've got to sail exactly within a pre-written agenda item. But thank you for answering my question about how this is an agenda item.
I don't think that, I think it was just merely discussion for direction on the item, trustee.
We gave that direction.
Yeah, and the direction was given. There was no vote.
Do we have consensus that we should go back to Rebecca and have her come back with some language about grandfathering relief as we've talked about?
Can I make a recommendation?
Please.
If you could come back, can you also look at the ability, I want to give these individuals some relief. If we could suspend the rules and not go through the committee process and come directly to just for these individuals, that would expedite it quite a bit for them, probably shave off a month or two easy if it comes directly to the board.
Unfortunately, trustee Manzo, variations are a statutory issue.
Oh, then I take it back.
Outside of the village's control. So what was proposed was only relief of the 18 months before and 12 months after, or 18 before, 18 after, as is currently being proposed, for those properties who purchase their lot within 18 months of the regulation and start that home within 18 months of the regulation. So it's not anybody who would newly purchase a lot or anybody who would fall outside those parameters.
Okay.
So to your earlier question about, would we not see any variations for 18 months? No, you would not see them specifically if they met those exact parameters.
So this is intended to capture exactly the situation that Faraz, who spoke in public comment, had. He bought his lot. He started working with designers, started planning his house, and then we passed the changes, and he didn't realize it.
And President Herman, I'll give you one. We've been burned so many times, with coach houses that you've seen, and we've corrected it, with homes being built lot line to lot line, and they've cost millions and millions of dollars. Problem is, it's a nice residential community, and it looks like a hotel. So, I mean, I really, if that makes more sense the way we're looking at it, so it's not blanket 18 months that we're not going to be looking at any of these, homes being built. It makes more sense to me.
It's strictly for those that were caught up before we passed the rules.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. You got your direction? Are we good procedurally?
Yes, and I would just add that I believe the direction on the previous issue was also incorporated exactly what trustee Nagel wanted, to bring back that definition at the next meeting. So.
Okay. Sorry, Faraz, but no public comment during this section of the meeting, but you talk to me after the meeting when we get done at midnight, the way it's going. All right. So we got the next item, the 23 Concord Drive floor area ratio. May I have a motion for the approval of an FAR setback variation for 23 Concord Drive?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Director Vondrasek, would you please present?
So this evening, we have the application from 23 Concord that had exceeded the FAR at 0.6. The inclusion of the basement was part of that. As we have not taken any action in that, I want to just read the recommended motion. It is, I move the village board review the recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission denying the requested variation from sections 13(6)D(3)(C) of the zoning regulations to permit and allow the proposed principal structure at 23 Concord Drive. As the commission, or excuse me, as the village board appears not yet ready to really specify their FAR definition or the policy, I would like to allow Mr. Baftieri the opportunity to hear the board's opinion on his proposed home.
Would it make sense for us to table that until the next meeting to see where we end up with the definition? Because as I understand it, this variation ruling is not necessary if the FAR passes the way we've recommended it, right?
The only opportunity this homeowner did submit prior to the Planning and Zoning Commission's 2 months of deliberation, and I believe Mr. Baftieri is here if you want to ask him if he would like to continue to wait or if he would prefer an answer.
Right, so to be clear, the grandfathering provision
Would
talked
then
about
qualify
would
this
cover
property
him,
owner, but that won't be
as might the FAR definition.
correct.
So it seems to me to be in his best interest for us to table the variation discussion until we come back to the next meeting and see where we end up with those. Are you, it's up to him. Would you, come on up forward, please.
Thank you, Mr. Baftieri. June 10th.
Hi, my name is Pete Baftieri. I'm the owner of the Lot 23 Concord Drive, and also I'm the owner of A&E Luxury Builders, which happen to build a lot of luxury homes in Oak Brook for 27 years. I heard all the comments from the village board, and I'll prefer, if it's possible for the sake of time, to get a vote from you if you can approve this, because it meets all other requirements except the FAR. This house can be built exactly how it's right now presented to the village for review and prints, and site plan is ready. It can be built without basement. It meets all the requirements: height, setbacks, 0.2 lot coverage. So for the sake of time, I'm building this house for my son. It's not for a client. He lives in Oak Brook, and his dream was to have a house in Oak Brook for his kids. And that's why, for the sake of time, if it's possible, to vote and to get approved so I can proceed with Rebecca. Prints that are ready, actually, for review. Everything is ready for review. So to not lose the time, summer.
You're certainly entitled to have us deliberate it, and so we're happy to do so. I will note that in the packet, it says that Rebecca's statement is that if the FAR definition was at 0.4 and did not include the basement, then your ratio would be 0.38, which means it would be within the permissible FAR, had we defined it that way, correct? All right, so the applicant would like us to not table this and discuss it tonight. We got a motion on the table, right?
Yeah. If it's only the basement, it sounds like the only requirement, the only variance, the only thing you need is for the basement only. Everything else is fine?
Everything is fine.
Then I think that's fine. I would support that.
Now this is, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted against it, saying there was not a hardship. I don't disagree with that, given the fact that we have these regulations in place. I assume that, Mike, the hardship we're really saying is that you got caught up in the regulation change.
In the middle of this, yeah.
So, any other discussion? Naveen?
Yes, I have some discussion.
Go ahead.
I attended that meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission on February 5, 2025, and it was a very interesting, spirited discussion. The one comment that I remembered, and then I was searching for in my notes, and I just found it on page 13 of my notes. Wayne Zimmer said, and Wayne is an architect, he said, "This house is in keeping with the vernacular of what is being built now in Brook Forest." I think that's architecture speak for saying the house fits in.
Yes.
And so to me, Mr. Zimmer carries a lot of weight, and I know it was very contested, but in light of the direction that we're going, I would support granting the variance.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would also support granting the variance, but I'm also asking a question, why are we waiting on the grandfathering thing till the next meeting? What's the purpose of waiting?
Discussion.
No, we don't have
already
to.
had a discussion.
I recommended that we table it so we didn't have to take the risk of a negative vote on the variation. He wants to proceed, so we are actually proceeding with the variation discussion. We don't have to wait. We're having a discussion right now. There's a motion on the table to grant them the variance.
But I'm saying if we grant him the variance, we should grant the variance to other grandfathered
There's no other
projects.
variation.
Why are we waiting? We all
Because
have
there's no
given
other-
that direction
That'll be at the
anyway.
next
No other,
meeting.
there's no other variation applications pending. This is a specific application that was pending. My only point was that if we get to the grandfathering relief, the variation's unnecessary. The builder would like to not wait. He's got his variation, it's already been ruled on by the Planning and Zoning Commission. He's up for approval. Trustee Tazinga is in favor of granting the variance, I think. Trustee Manzo, I think, is favorably disposed.
I'm in the favor.
Are we ready for a vote? Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Jane.
Yes.
Trustee Manzo.
Yes.
Trustee Nagel.
Yes.
Trustee Martin.
Yes.
Trustee Tazinga.
Yes.
Motion carries. You got your variance.
Congratulations.
Thanks, I appreciate it. I'm going to build a beautiful house. Thanks.
All right. Would you believe we're just moving on to active business now? Resolution R-2300, a resolution approving the award contract to the lowest responsible bidder, K5 Construction of Westmont, Illinois, for the hot mix asphalt material purchase. May I have a motion for the approval of Resolution R-2300?
So moved.
May I have a second?
A second.
Director O'Malley, would you please present?
All right, thank you, President Herman. Following board approval, village staff requested bids for a hot mix asphalt contract, which includes binder and surface coarse asphalts and tack coat. These materials are used to make roadway paving repairs and restorations, and also maintain the improve the village's pathway system. On April 2nd, staff posted a hot mix asphalt material purchase request for bid. 3 sealed bids were submitted and opened on April 16th. K5 Construction of Westmont, Illinois was the lowest responsible bidder, with the lowest responsive bid in the amount of $42,221. This is a savings of $24,779 from the approved 2025 budget.
Any discussion?
Just a quick question. We approved a similar request some time back, right? We did a asphalt purchase about, I think, 4, 5, 6.
I believe that was the request to bid, to go out for
that was
the
it.
bid.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Manzo.
Yes.
Trustee Nagel.
Yes.
Trustee Jane.
Yes.
Trustee Tazinga.
Yes.
Trustee Martin.
Yes.
Our motion carries. Trustee Martin, what time is it now in Italy? Next i-
3:25 in the morning.
3:25, okay. Resolution R-2301, a resolution to adopt the 2025 Shared Use Path and Bike Route Master Plan. May I have a motion for the approval of Resolution R-2301?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Director O'Malley, would you please present this resolution?
All right, thank you, President Herman. Following an approved professional engineering services agreement for the village's shared use path and bike route master plan, a study was performed that included public meetings, a community open house event, and a presentation of the master plan at the 422 Board of Trustees meeting. The shared use path and bike route master plan will provide recommendations to improve safety and enhance the connectivity for people walking and biking throughout the village. Adoption of this master plan will allow village staff to responsibly continue in our efforts to develop an enhancement of the bike path plan and as part of the multi-year capital plan.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I just wanted to be clear and make it clear to everyone that my understanding is that we are just adopting the plan here, but that any projects that we undertake consistent with the plan each have to be vetted, approved, sent out for bid, all of those things. So adopting the plan doesn't commit us to every project in the plan at any specific time, correct?
That is correct. Everything will be vetted through the board or the capital improvement and budget time.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. In the last time when we discussed it, we talked about the 35th Street, and we talked about how we can create the safety on 35th Street in the walk path. Is that part of this thing? Because in the master plan, it doesn't include a 35th Street bike path.
The 35th incident, I believe, was brought on by a resident of Tartan Lakes. We've addressed that by reassuring that the road is striped. It's a double-lane stripe, and we've added signage for no passing. There's also a technical memo that Civil Tech will be preparing, discussing the road condition there.
So we'll address the bike path.
So
and the path-
technically, it's not part of this plan. It was an off project.
So that'll be addressed as part of
Yes.
this. Perfect. Thank you.
Any other comments? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Nagel.
Yes.
Trustee Jane.
Yes.
Trustee Manzo.
Yes.
Trustee Tisinga. Trustee Tisinga.
Yes.
Trustee Martin.
Yes.
Motion carries. Next item, Resolution R-2302, a resolution approving the final plat of consolidation for the property commonly known as 3500 Madison Street, Oak Brook, Illinois. May I have a motion for the approval of Resolution R-2302?
So moved.
Second.
Director Vondrasek, would you please present this item?
Very briefly, the property owner purchased an acre of land from the property that is north of them at 3500 Spring, and this approval would consolidate the lot to make a larger lot for one single-family dwelling.
Any discussion? Trustee Dzizinga, I know you like consolidations.
Yes, they're the opposite of the miniaturization of Oak Brook, and consolidations are to be encouraged. So congratulations to the homeowner. I look forward to voting in favor of it.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Jane.
Yes.
Trustee Manzo.
Yes.
Trustee Nagel.
Yes.
Trustee Martin.
Yes.
Trustee Tisinga.
Yes.
Motion carries. Next item, Resolution R-2303, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a memorandum of understanding by and between the Emergency Telephone System of DuPage County, ETSB, and the Village of Oak Brook for computer-aided dispatch interface access. May I have a motion for the approval of Resolution R-2303?
So moved.
Second.
Chief Strokos, would you please present this resolution?
Yes, thank you, President Herman. As the board knows, last year we were able to renegotiate our contract with Axon, incorporating all of our tech into one package, and we added an RMS system, which is the records management system. We broke free from the consortium in DuPage County with two other municipalities, Downers Grove and Addison. We've been building out this very Oak Brook-specific AI-enabled system that's going to incorporate all of our previous data from the Hexagon platform. This MOU with ETSB is necessary because although the ETSB is well-funded, they're very guided by statutory limitations as to what they can spend their funds on. And so the build-out and what we need to incorporate our computer-aided dispatch into the RMS system so it will self-populate, that's why this MOU is necessary.
Thank you. Discussion?
Just a comment.
Yep.
You look real good on Channel 7 talking about the drones. That's good press for Oak Brook. Nice job.
By the way, the drone as first responder is live. So congratulations. All right, any other discussion on this item? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Nagel.
Yes.
Trustee Manzo.
Yes.
Trustee Jane.
Yes.
Trustee Tisinga.
Yes.
Trustee Martin.
Yes.
Motion carries. Next item, Resolution R-2304, a resolution to waive competitive bidding and authorize the award of a 60-month lease and equipment maintenance agreement to Gordon Flesch, DBA GFC Leasing of Madison, Wisconsin, for the replacement of 11 multifunction device copiers. May I have a motion for the approval of Resolution R-2304?
So moved.
Second.
Director Gilbert, would you please present this resolution?
Yes, thank you, President Herman. The village's current lease with Konica Minolta is coming to an end, and with that, they failed to meet expectations requiring shortage of toners and delayed in service. Because we're in a unique situation, we had the library with the TBS system and paper cut, only Canon and Rico were our other options. The village utilized a cooperative purchasing agreement through PEPPM, which already completed the competitive bid process. After evaluating options, staff determined that Canon was the best meets the village needs. Gordon Flesh includes toner, staples, and other essential supplies in their offering. The agreement totals just over $139,000 over 5 years, with a fixed cost per copy of 70.74 cents for black and white and 3.3 cents for color, and these rates won't change for the 5 years.
Thank you. Discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Jane.
Yes.
Trustee Manzo.
Yes.
Trustee Nagel.
Yes.
Trustee Martin.
Yes.
Trustee Tisinga.
Yes.
Motion carries. Next item, ordinance S-1728, an ordinance authorizing the sale or donation of or recycling or disposal of certain items of personal property owned by the Village of Oak Brook. May I have a motion for the approval of ordinance S-1728?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Director Famero, would you please present this item?
Good evening. This item is to surplus some equipment by the Public Works Department that already have reached the end of its useful life, or it has been replaced with newer models. These items will be placed on iBid, which is an online auctioneer for sale of the surplus items. Also, there is a donation of a fire hose to the Romaville Fire Academy, which will be required to sign a release agreement prior to the donation.
Thank you. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Manzo.
Yes.
Trustee Nagel.
Yes.
Trustee Jane.
Yes.
Trustee Tisinga.
Yes.
Trustee Martin.
Yes.
Motion carries. Next item, what some of you have been waiting for, discussion on Sports Core Committee recommendation and subcommittee findings regarding long-term sustainability of the Bath and tennis facilities and a revised proposal from the existing licensed operator. So how we're going to handle this discussion is I'm going to start off with a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation, just to kind of set some framework and give some historical context. Then I'm going to ask the representatives from the applicant, Oak Brook Manor, to come up and speak, and then we will have a board discussion. I know that Trustee Jane has a few PowerPoint slides of his own he wants us to show, which we'll do, and then following all that board discussion, as I said at the beginning, we'll open it up for anyone who wants to speak publicly who did not speak at the beginning of the meeting. So with that, would you load up my slides? Oh. I got it, okay. All right, so bear with me here. Got some interesting historical pictures here. You can see on this opening slide what the Bath and Tennis Club pool and edge of the clubhouse looked like the year it opened up. Looks a little bit, in some respects, a little bit different today. A lot of trees have grown up. I want to talk about Paul Butler. It seems like every time we get into a discussion in this village about something of historical significance, something that dates back to the development of Oak Brook, people seem to invoke Paul Butler. What would Paul want? What would Paul have wanted? And as someone who actually grew up here in the 70s when Paul Butler was still here and still alive, I've always been amazed at how many people from that era have different perspectives on what Paul was thinking and what Paul would think today. All right? I'm not saying anyone's right or wrong. I'm just saying that there are different perspectives. And what's interesting to me is when I have the occasion to talk to people who were back living in Oak Brook in the really old days. And interestingly, we have close family friends we grew up with in town, the Francis family, Paul and his late wife, Mimi Francis, who bought 4 or 5 acres of horse property in the mid-1950s on Oak Brook Hills Road, right adjacent or across the street from Ray Pace, who still lives there, who also has been there for decades. Ray is the archivist at our Historical Society. And I enjoy talking to people like Paul. Paul is 96 years old. I had dinner with him in Florida this winter. And I always enjoyed talking about the old days. They had 2 horses. At times, they had a pig named Lucy, a cow named Betsy. I forget some of the others. Horses named Pegasus and Amanda, who I used to ride those horses throughout Ginger Creek. But I asked Paul, I said, tell me, when did Oak Brook really change? And Paul's perspective was, well, you know, Oak Brook really changed, and I think from his perspective, changed for the worse around 1960, when Paul Butler started developing Oak Brook and started developing the subdivisions. Well, why was that? Well, before that, you could ride your horse anywhere in Oak Brook. And when he started developing Oak Brook, you couldn't do that anymore. My point is that, yes, Paul Butler was a visionary. Paul Butler was first and foremost a developer. And he did a lot of development. And of course, he developed the Oak Brook Bath and Tennis Club, which was opened in 1969 or thereabouts. And when he developed it, it had a pool, it had a tennis, and it had the banquet facilities, just like you saw on that first slide. There was an initiation fee at the time, and there were annual dues. This is what the clubhouse, the banquet facility, looked like when it was first built. It doesn't look anything like what you see today because this structure burned down in 1973. Greg asked me, our village manager, said, why did so many structures burn down in the early days of Oak Brook? I said, look at all that cedar on that roof. We didn't have the same fire protection. A lot of structures burned, a lot of Butler structures and barns burned over the years. That was a very large clubhouse, very large clubhouse. What replaced it, I don't believe, was as large, even after all the additions that were made over the years. The other interesting thing I learned, and I was able to find this at the Oak Brook Historical Society, these are some blueprints, some floor plans or site plans that Paul Butler had his architect develop. This was one of the options he was looking at. It's hard to see the print here. I can show you here, but I circled some of these things. Here's the pools, pretty much similar to what we have today. I think he reversed the diving well from what it is today. Here's the original 6 tennis courts that are still there. This was going to be an indoor pool. This, in the red box, was contemplated to be future indoor tennis courts and an indoor skating rink. This was going to be the locker rooms and right here and the pool service items adjacent to the pool, just like you're going to see is being proposed by Chic Chef. You'll see that in a little bit. And down here at the bottom was a whole lot of parking. And in that small print, you can see proposed future parking. I think it says something like up to 550 cars, which is more parking than exists there today. All right, so now Paul didn't ultimately build this. I can't tell you that this was in his heart what he ultimately wanted to do, but he certainly paid an architect and to design this, and it's certainly something he thought about. The clubhouse. People talk about the clubhouse. It was used for banquets since the very beginning. It was used for all sorts of functions. You go to the Historical Society, there are files of newspaper clippings of all the magnificent events that were held there over the years. And Paul Butler was not cooking. He had outside operators that were running that for him. Then people say, well, has the Bath and Tennis changed over the years? Well, we know it changed because we know that big, beautiful building burned down and got rebuilt. It was rebuilt in 1975. But over the years, there were multiple additions that were made to it. 4 separate additions, specifically significant additions that were made over the years. Some of the additions were made with the intention of trying to grow the business, trying to have multiple events at one time so they could grow profitability of the Bath and Tennis Clubhouse. But despite that, mix up in slides here. So the question often about the Bath and Tennis is, well, is this an amenity? That's a term you'll hear used over time, or you've heard used in time in the past. I think the real issue is this still of value to our community? It certainly was in 1969 when we started going there. As I've said publicly before, this town was crawling with kids, and many of us went over to use the Bath and Tennis. I see other families here have used it over the years as well. In a town like Oak Brook, that is not Hinsdale, that is not Elmhurst, that is not Downers Grove, because we don't have a downtown, we don't have sidewalks, we don't have train stations. We have open space and we have recreational amenities, unparalleled recreation amenities. This has always been one of them. Is this a differentiator? Does this attract young families to our town? I would argue it does. I would argue that it is again, and I would argue that it can do even much better at that, and that we should be preserving this for future generations, and that it will enhance and continues to enhance property values. But as we've acknowledged recently, and I've been very public about, the sports core, and especially the Bath and Tennis Club, has been a financial drain on the village for years. The general fund and the infrastructure funds have made massive subsidies to this club over the years, notwithstanding the fact that in 1995 and again in 2011, the village board passed an ordinance requiring that the sports core be self-sustaining. And yet, in 2003, the village went to referendum and narrowly passed a referendum to sell several acres of sports core land that were rezoned for home sites. This would be over by the Westchester subdivision, and those proceeds were used to reinvest back in the sports core, including a significant amount of money that was used to expand the banquet facility. And here's an example of exactly the kind of financial drain we've had. These are the amounts of loans from the general fund to the sports core over the years, mostly to prop up the Bath and Tennis Club. If you take all those numbers from 1995 to 2012, it adds up to $2,362,000. And then what happened, I think, in 2012 is the board acknowledged the fact that there's just no way, the way it was being operated, the sports core and the Bath and Tennis Club, there was no way under the way it was being operated that those loans could be repaid. So what did they do? They forgave the loans. They didn't call it forgiveness, they called it an equity transfer. But they wiped off the loans from the books of the general fund. And yet, even after doing that, the losses continued, and so did the subsidies, as you see, through 2015. So when I first thought about running for trustee, it was in 2020, I started looking at these finances and, being passionate about the Bath and Tennis Club and the sports core, having grown up there, I looked at this and said, this is unsustainable. This has to stop. And I made some comments at public board meetings before I was a trustee. And I quickly earned a reputation around town among Bath and Tennis adherents that Larry wants to shut the Bath and Tennis Club down. That was not at all what I intended. What I intended was that we needed to address this. We could not keep kicking this can down the road. Something had to change. And so I was elected as a trustee in 2021, and we started working with particularly our new staff, Greg Summers and the amazing team he's built. He hired Joe Mitchell, Art Segura. We got some amazing staff who spent a lot of time on the sports core. And we started doing a lot of the things that had been talked about for years, that people had recommended for years, that we really hadn't been doing. Things like marketing, things like making it fun. All these things everyone talked about, we just had to do that. And we started doing that. And as a result, memberships have been growing substantially. And I will tell you that in 2025, Oak Brook Bath and Tennis Club membership, resident and non-resident, is the highest it's ever been in the history of the club. We just stopped taking new memberships from non-residents this past week. We hit a cap. We will still take non-resident memberships. We stopped taking non-resident memberships. I don't believe that in the history of the Bath and Tennis Club we've ever had to stop taking memberships. And last year, and maybe the last 2 years, the Bath and Tennis Club was operationally sustainable. On an operational basis, it at least broke even. This year, with our dramatically increased membership, it will likely generate a meaningful profit on an operational standpoint. And here's a graph that shows you how membership has changed. The first to the left of the graph is when it opened, and then where you see today in 2025 is where we are today, or where we are at least a few weeks ago, or a couple weeks ago when this was prepared. And you can see that membership has in fact gone up. Now, to be fair, non-resident membership has grown faster than resident membership, but resident membership is growing. It grew 25% last year. And this is a very good trend. What's interesting is if you look in 2004, you see a spike. Membership grew dramatically. What happened that year? Membership was dropping, and the village board said at that time, what are we going to do to grow membership? And they said, let's drop the price. And so they dropped the price by 2/3. Well, of course, membership went up. But they didn't do anything else. They didn't make it more fun. They didn't do anything operationally or structurally. They just lowered the price. And so membership spiked, and then what did it do? It languished for years. So again, why is membership growing recently? Because we are marketing it. You all know that. You see our materials. We're making it fun. Thank you, Joe Mitchell, for the idea of building a climbing wall. We're probably next year going to put a water slide in if the pool doesn't crumble before then. We put an obstacle course in last year. We're doing more events. Thank you, Art Segura. We have movie nights, pool events, food trucks. We've added games. We've got ping pong. We've got cornhole games. We've got volleyball. We bought new kayaks this year. We've got new food service. Chic Chef is operating it. People love the new food service. We've got village employee managers who are on site making sure that customer service is good. And you know what? Membership is still a bargain. It's probably too cheap. And in fact, here's what's happened to membership fees over the years. So you see where it started out, I think in 1977, when we bought the club, and thereafter it kind of tracked inflation, but then in 2004, as I said, we dropped the fees dramatically, and they've barely crept up since then. And you can see the dotted lines up above are inflation, where they would be today if they just kept pace with inflation since we bought the club. You can see we're well below what it would be. I think if you were a resident today is paying, I don't know, $900 roughly. And if we kept pace with inflation, that resident fee would be over $2,500. So in this town, we often talk about resident versus non-resident utilization. You've heard this debate recently at the Park District. How does this translate into the sports core? Well, unlike the Park District, Oak Brook residents don't pay a municipal tax, property tax, to the Village of Oak Brook. So non-resident use is fully subsidizing or subsidizes the sports core. And because no village funds, well, I shouldn't say that. Historically, general funds have been used, as I said, to prop it up. So historically, village residents have been subsidizing it. Now with our, at least operational stability, that's not the case. But the real question is, as I said, can we continue to grow resident utilization of the Oak Brook Bath and Tennis, and particularly the pool and the tennis? And I believe, as I said, we can do that. We're already starting to see that. I was just given today from Greg some census numbers, which I asked for. I've often commented in the past that until a few years ago, our community had become so aged in place that 40% of our population was over the age of 65. In the last 3 years, that's taken a dramatic turn, and this community is becoming a lot younger, a lot younger. In just 3 or 4 years, our average age in the community has gone from something like 55 to 51. And you can see from all the new home activity that it's going to keep growing. Families are coming back. So I believe that this is a resource that is going to be great for that. People have said, well, there's less than 100 members of the Bath and Tennis Club. You know, in a town of 8,000 or 3,000 homes, that's just not enough to sustain it. Well, those 100 families or so that belong, 90 to 100 families that belong, represent 491 residents. 491 residents of Oak Brook use the Bath and Tennis Club today, this year, so far to date. We added up numbers for the golf course last year. Last year, there were probably no more than 225 residents using the golf course. There were 87 resident members of the golf course and who had either golf or range memberships. We introduced last year a first ever preferred tee time card where a resident can, without being a member, get preferred access to tee times as long as they come in and register. 85 people registered for that, so we know there's 85 people who are not members, who are residents who are using the golf course. And there's probably some who don't have that. So let's just assume there were 50 other people who were neither members or don't have a preferred card but still use the golf course. That still adds up to half as many people using the Bath and Tennis Club. So I reject the notion that the Bath and Tennis Club is not utilized by lots of people in Oak Brook. So then people say, well, what about the clubhouse? You know, well, there's been this narrative about this commercialization of the clubhouse. It's always been a clubhouse. It's always been a banquet facility. It's always had weddings. This is the Oak Brook Bath and Tennis Wedding Guide. This is not from 1977. This is not from the 1990s. This was a guide the village put out that we were using when we were operating it ourselves up until 2 years ago. We were marketing weddings. We had a full-time employee whose job it was to sell weddings. She wasn't, I mean, she was a lovely person, and we did sell weddings there, but we were losing money at it. We probably weren't as good as we should have been, which is why we ultimately had a referendum that said, should we keep losing money there? And you all said no. So instead, we stopped losing $200,000 a year, and we went out to bid and found someone that can help us make money. So we talk about this operational sustainability, right? So throughout the sports core, the golf course is profitable, the Bath and Tennis Club is no longer losing money, the banquet facility has turned from a $200,000 roughly loss to a $200,000 roughly profit. And I've been questioned about these numbers, and I'll talk to anyone. There's a lot of variables that go into this. There's a lot of game playing that went on in the past. One of the ways that the sports core numbers were propped up in the past is not just those direct subsidies I showed you, but there was a terrible underallocation of village overhead, staff time not being properly allocated to the profit and loss statement of the Bath and Tennis. That has been changing. Far more of that overhead is being charged over to it today, and yet we're still showing profits. But here's the problem. That facility I showed you in the first slide from 1969 is now over 50 years old, while the clubhouse, right, rebuilt in 75. You've got a 50-year-old clubhouse. You've got a 60-year-old pool almost. These things are crumbling. The village has never saved a dime in the sports core fund to deal with these things. Our Public Works Department is constantly patching up things at the clubhouse building. Last year, we spent over $100,000 on repairs, emergency repairs, to the clubhouse facility. This year, so far, we're not even halfway through the year, we spent $70,000 on emergency repairs. And yet, in 2016, 9 years ago, we commissioned a reserve study knowing that this thing was crumbling to say, you know, what do we need just to keep this thing going? And the number that the engineers came up with was nearly $4 million, today almost $5 million for future repairs. And I don't even think that included the pools. I think that was more like the building, if I'm not mistaken. So we got a problem here. The pool, again, it's 60 years old. Well, people say, well, gee, I thought 2 or 3 years ago we replaced the lining in the pool. I got lots of props tonight. We did replace the lining. We had a terrible contractor who did a terrible job, and moreover, they put a brand-new lining on a 60-year-old concrete shell. Well, what's happened? These are pieces of the lining that were pulled off, that fell off the pool a couple of weeks ago before we opened it and filled it up. This is what we're dealing with. Brand-new lining coming out. These things are well past their useful life. The tennis courts, the clay tennis courts, very lucky to have clay tennis courts. I'm not a tennis player, but tennis players would tell you there's very few places you can go and play on clay. But they need to be replaced. They're old. They're 60 years old. Yes, they're reasonably well maintained by our tennis pro. We spend tens of thousands of dollars on clay to patch them up every year, but they are structurally failing. And the clubhouse building, as I said, is really, really crumbling. So knowing all this, knowing that we're losing money, knowing that it's going to take millions of dollars to patch this thing up, we went to referendum, as I said. I may have jumped a slide here. We went to referendum in 2022 and asked our residents, given the fact that we're losing all this money, should we keep doing this or should we do something else? And 2/3 of the people said, no, don't keep doing this and losing money. So after that referendum, the board went out to seek an RFP for public operators to see if they wanted to operate this facility. The initial RFP did not generate any financially viable operators. Later on, in October 23, we once again went out to RFP, and we got 3 vendors who submitted proposals. The winning bidder by far was Chic Chef. And as I said, we already know what the results of that are. So Chic Chef has done what no one else has been able to do there in the past over decades and operate this thing successfully. So successfully, they came back to us and said, listen, you know, we know what we're doing here. This is working out, pretty well for the village and all that, but it's still an old facility. It's still crumbling, and this is not good for the future of this for any of us. We've got an idea. We'd like to rebuild this facility. And if you allow us to rebuild it, we'll build you new locker rooms. We'll build you a new pool cafe area, new check-in facility. We'll build you a new tennis office. Anyone who's been over to the Bath and Tennis Club, there's a separate tennis hut that has been said is more caulk and paint than anything. Completely falling apart, dangerously so. The tennis bathrooms, or bathroom, I should say, is a terrible mess. They said, we'll build all this stuff. And so they came to the village last fall with this idea. It was presented to individual board members to show them just conceptually what was going on. And most all the board members said, this is a great idea, but two things. What you're showing us is too large, and we're not going to pay for it. So they came back to us after some deliberation, and they said, okay, we'll pay for the whole thing, and we'll cut the size in half. And that's really what we've been presenting. And in fact, the proposal on the table that we've been talking about is an increase in guest count from what it is today, but half of what they initially proposed, and basically it works out to about 80 more guests than what we currently are capable of holding today. And so what it amounts to is that they're willing to invest what's probably going to be over $8 million to rebuild the facilities at no cost to the village, yet understand that this will be village property. We will own this building on day one. They, of course, want to recover their investment, their very significant investment. So they're looking for a 20-year extension of their license and 2 5-year renewal options so that they can recover their investment. But thanks to the work our staff has done, the license terms are renegotiated if this deal were to go through with increased revenue streams to the village from what the current license is, and it's projected that over time, the average revenue to the village will go from $200,000 to $600,000. That's from a combination of our share of food and beverage sales, rent, venue fees, and sales taxes. And the idea is that this ample amount of annual revenue can create the sinking fund to replace the pool and the tennis courts, which will cost millions and millions and millions of dollars. I don't know if that failure and that need to replace is going to happen next year or in 5 years or 3 years. I don't know exactly when it is. In the meantime, if we do this, we can bank the money, and we'll have money to, if we have to borrow the money or borrow from the general fund, we'll have the money to repay it. If we don't do it, Chic Chef's current license term runs for another couple of years. They have a couple of 2-year extension options. If we don't do this deal, they will most likely write out their term here and move on and find somewhere where they can do what they want to do to be successful. Then what happens? We go back out for RFP, we find another operator. Do we return to losses on the operation? A lot of unknowns. What I can tell you is I know how unsuccessful we were for years. The odds of us finding another operator like this, given how hard it was to find this operator, in my opinion, are remote. So there's been a lot of community objections to this. Why is it so long, the license term? As I said, if they're going to put in that kind of money, they need time to recover their investment. I wish we did this 20 or 30 years ago in the first place. That 20 or 30-year time period would have been up. We would have had a new facility, or what was a new facility? People said, well, wait a second. What if Chic Chef defaults? We own the facility. We own it on day one. They build it, we own it. If they default, that's up to them and their lender. We own the facility. What happens if they don't do the kind of business that they projected that they do? There is a provision in the agreement that says if they don't perform under a certain formula, we have the right to terminate them and keep the building. What if they're doing fine, but we decide after some period of time, say after 10 years, we want them out for whatever reason? We have the right to terminate them for a fee. That fee is roughly equal to buying them out of their loan plus a modest penalty fee. And importantly, once they build it, they're responsible for maintaining their portion of the facility, something that right now we're responsible for. People have said, well, I don't like the proposal they've made. I don't like the architecture. It's white. It's stark. It's not Paul Butler. It certainly doesn't look like the original clubhouse or even the current clubhouse. The current clubhouse, of course, is very dated, 1970s architecture. But I'll tell you, and you'll maybe see this when Chic Chef makes their presentation, I know that Chic Chef did a lot of research to try and come up with something with their architects that reflected Oak Brook. We may disagree, and we always said architecture in Oak Brook is in the eye of the beholder. But I can tell you that Paul Butler was all about white brick. Butler National is a white brick building. You see it in the lower middle. Paul Butler's house in the upper right was a white farmhouse. The mall, Oak Brook Center. There's Marshall Fields, white brick. The original monument signs to the mall were white brick. In my opinion, this was Oak Brook. I've heard objections about the size of this. As I said, I'm not sure it's any larger than what the original clubhouse was. A lot of the additional space is expanding the pool and the tennis facilities. What you really have here is you've got this facility being shifted from left to right. And by doing that, you remove the current building obstructions, additions that were made that block the view from the pool to the beach. I showed you that first slide, the original pool when it opened, there was a clear vista down to the beach. That doesn't exist anymore. It shifts over. Right now, one of the ugliest parts of the Bath and Tennis Club is when you drive up to the circle driveway on your right side, you see a very ugly, fenced-in, poorly fenced-in motor court where all the dumpsters are kept and all the deliveries are made. They've proposed a very elegant, if I believe it's brick, motor courtyard that's secluded where the trucks can move in and the dumpsters and all that stuff is screened out. That's this whole portion here on the lower right. Right? The tennis facility, this blue thing is the old tennis hut. That's going to go away, and those facilities will be incorporated right here within the building. So yes, this does represent an increase in size from the current facility, but I would argue not excessively so, and arguably the biggest increase in size is benefit the village and the Bath and Tennis as much as anything. People say, well, we're commercializing, we're privatizing it. I've made the point, it's always been privately operated. The village has used multiple caterers over the years. Most recently, we used Tasty Catering, before that Callahan Catering. It was always catered. The banquet uses have always been used. And by the way, we privately operate all sorts of functions in the sports core. Our golf course restaurant is now operated by an outside operator. And by the way, more successfully so than when we operated it. The soccer fields are operated by a private operator. The golf, tennis, and swim instruction, they're all private operators. We get rent, piece of revenue from all those operators, just like we are proposing in this deal. People say, well, the banquet facility is no longer the community gathering place it once was. Things have changed in the village over time. Back in the 70s, that was the place. We didn't have a West Wing conference room in the Village Hall. We didn't have a park district that held all sorts of meeting facilities. We didn't have a library. We didn't have a historical building that has room for use. We have a lot of options now for community meetings, but nonetheless, staff has negotiated terms with Chic Chef that would allow the village a whole bunch of access to this facility for public meetings. In fact, they've even negotiated an option where Chic Chef would host on at least a monthly basis a village gathering for residents to come together. That's kind of the background I want to give you, but this topic, as many of you who have been very involved in this have known, this has been discussed now at a couple of board meetings. There's been some sports core committee deliberations. The sports core committee had a subcommittee that did further deliberations and went over a lot of the numbers. Trustees Manzo and Martin, who are liaisons to the sports core committee, were involved in that subcommittee working group. And Trustee Martin, it's probably now 4 a.m. in Italy. If you're still awake, I'd like you to take us through some of this math that you guys worked out.
Sure, thank you. If anything happens with the audio, please let me know. Someone interrupt me. So basically what we were tasked with in this working group was to try to understand the financial viability of some funding options for the necessary repairs at the Bath and Tennis. Not to advocate, not to look at any particular option on the table, but just to give some basic sources of funding as options and see what the long-term financial projections would look like by choosing those funding options. And so we really separated it into three basic ways of thinking about funding. One of those would be village support, coming either completely from the general fund or from the general fund offset by other pieces of the sports core, namely golf. We looked at outside funding options. So this would be like a public-private partnership. And then we looked at gift funding as a particular option. So those were the three categories of options that we looked at. And as you may have seen on one of Larry's slides, we separated the capital investment into two pieces. So one of those is the building itself, so the banquet facility, the locker rooms, the cafe, the tennis facility, et cetera. And the other of those would be the actual pool replacement and tennis court replacement itself. So sort of the building and the non-building facilities. And you've seen this number, this $4.8 million number thrown around a few times, and that is just a projection for repairs on the building. And the number has gotten so high and is so dated that at this point we were operating on the cost of replacing the building. So replacing the square footage of the building as it is now with a new facility that contained all three of those pieces. So the cafe and locker rooms, the banquet facility, and the tennis facility. We're estimating that around $6 million. We can talk about the details of how we got there, but we think that's a fair estimate given building costs and the size of the building as it exists now. And then we looked at some very specific numbers for replacing the pool. So a lot of this $8 million comes from replacing the pool, again, consistent with what we have now. So a wading pool, splash pad, a lap pool with zero depth entry, kind of like a beach entry, and then a diving well. So, and then replacing the tennis courts. And so that number is somewhere between 8 and 9 million. And so those were the two kind of investment numbers that we looked at. And so I'll start by walking through village financial support, and that'll introduce some of these columns and the assumptions that were made in getting to them. So if we were to support from the village fund, the general fund, we would need to outlay this money somewhere around $14 million, $14.5 million. And if we do that, we're taking from our general fund, and our general fund currently earns interest, and that interest is what we use to pay for a lot of the annual operations of the village. And so it would be unfair to take the money from that fund without having to pay it back with interest. And so what you see in the purple column there is the interest expense that would be required to repay on these different options. And so if you look at the difference in the first two, you'll notice that the amount that we would be borrowing from the general fund is the same, that $14.5 million, but there's a different interest expense. And that's because we're hoping to use some of the golf profit. And if we use the golf profit in the second option, we can pay down that loan faster, which means we don't pay as much interest over the total 20 years that we're looking at here. You'll also notice that there's maintenance. And that maintenance will be considerably lower than it's been in the past because these facilities will be brand new. So that's coming in at about 1.5 million. About 600,000 of that is a parking lot refurbishment that needs to be done under any option. If we take this path, what we did here in terms of the banquet operating revenue is we looked at the next best proposal that came in when we went out to RFP 2 years ago. And that next best proposal only included 10% of the food and beverage revenue. It did not include rent. It did not include venue fees, no sales tax from offsite catering. And so that's how we got to this number at an approximate food and beverage operating number that Chic Chef has been operating at. We use that as an estimate, 10% of that over the 20-year period. Would be the banquet operating revenue we would get under this option. And then we thought we could raise fees for membership. And so that would generate some additional revenue as well. But we also included a year, at a minimum, a year of non-revenue because we would be shut down to rebuild the pool. So in the second option, we are looking at using some golf funding. And I will say here that the capital plan for golf was really imperative here because one thing that the golfers made abundantly clear was that they didn't want to take from the profits of golf that were currently being used to save for capital improvements over the next 20 years. So talking to the superintendent, to Art, some other people at the golf course, we understood the capital investment plan that will be required over 20 years, and we've held that in reserve from the golf profits. So this $3 million, about $150,000 a year, is all that would be left to contribute to the other portions of the sports core after saving for capital improvements. And so if you think of those two options, basically where we end up is somewhere between 13, 14, and $17 million that the village would basically just use to subsidize the improvement of the bath and tennis area. Again, this is not a value judgment, just the numbers that would be required. And it may be that the village is interested in providing that, what did we call it last time? I think it was an equity transfer to the sports course. So that's one option. Another option would be a private-public partnership. And we're using the basis of the original agreement that had come out with Chic Chef. And there would be zero investment from the village in terms of the building itself. But we would still, of course, have the pool and the tennis courts to redo. That's that $8 million. The interest expense would obviously be considerably lower on a smaller loan, and the maintenance would be considerably lower because, as President Herman just mentioned, in the current agreement, maintenance on the building, the banquet facility itself, would be covered by the operator. We looked at the revenue projections, and again, these don't just include food and beverage take, but they also include sales tax, venue fees, and a number of other new provisions in the contract that would amount to somewhere just north of $12 million over the 20 years that we're looking at in the window. And then again, we thought we could increase membership revenue. And so even after completely rebuilding the pool facility, we would have a surplus of over $4 million in this option. So again, that surplus would include the same outcome as the one above, in that we would have a new building, both pool facilities, banquet facilities, and tennis facilities, and we would have completely new outdoor facilities, so the pool and the tennis courts. And then the last option we looked at here was external funding. So we looked at a full and a partial private donation. The full donation would, of course, be the full cost of renovating the building and the pool. The private donation option we looked at was just half, something like a matching agreement is what we thought we could maybe get with someone. So we looked at about half of that coming in private donation, the other half coming from the village. And you can see how these numbers play out. There would be a little bit higher maintenance cost and a little bit lower additional revenue in terms of the banquet and membership. And the reason for those differences were that we thought we would have to maintain the facility a bit longer while looking for a donation. And because we couldn't build as quickly with those two options looking for a donation, we would have a little bit less time to recoup the additional revenue from membership and from operating. And so if we looked at those two options, if we could find someone to come in with a full private donation over the 20-year period, we would look also to be positive there, somewhere in the realm of $2 million. And that would, of course, just be generated by the additional revenue streams. And then the private donation, about half would require about an $8 million investment from the village. So those were the different funding options that we looked at. There are, of course, tons of assumptions that go into 20-year financial projections. You can see some of these here at the bottom. And I will say that there are many, I used the term before, branches of the decision tree that we could go down to investigate some of these. But we really just wanted to have some footing into these big basic funding options in terms of a village subsidy, a public-private partnership, and a donation. And so that was sort of how we ended up in these three buckets. And those are the outcomes that we would project, again, with some variation around them. I will just make one quick point here, which is that we may have some difference in opinion as to what the banquet facility could earn from a different operator versus the terms of the agreement that we had looked at. But even if you put the $12 million in the village subsidy option, we're still losing money. And so even if we could operate it and find another operator to bring in $12 million a year, it would still cost the village somewhere around $5 million in that option. So just sort of keep that in mind. There is some variance, again, that could happen from these numbers, but we thought they were a good basis for thinking about these different funding options as we move forward.
Thank you. I know an enormous amount of work went into preparing that. As to your last option with gift funding, I've done the math. I've counted the number of people in this room. And if we just collect $400,000 on the way out from everyone here, this will be very easy. Absent that, I'm going to invite Chic Chef now to come up and make their
And
presentation.
Herman, can we, before we get to Chic Chef, I would like to talk about it because I
No,
think we
we're-
want, just
no,
listen to
I
me.
set the agenda.
One, there is no proposal on the table from Chic Chef. Number two, we are here to solve the Oak Brook Bath and Tennis, and I would like to submit that the banquet is an irrelevant issue.
I understand. You will
So I
have,
would like to
Thank you.
share that perspective.
understand, we have an
before we
agenda.
Chic
The
Chef.
agenda's been created, and the agenda,
There's no proposal on the table from Chic Chef.
Okay.
Why are we talking about it?
Trustee, you're out of line. I've invited Chic Chef to come up and make their proposal. Thank you. Please.
Good evening. My name is Scott Day. I am the attorney who has the privilege of working with Chic Shack as it relates to this particular concept and the proposal. This is truly, as was referenced by the trustee Martin, this is proposed as a public-private partnership. They're tricky to document. The interests are diverse, but I think that they've been well researched by the village in this particular instance. So we are lucky enough to have the recommendation from the subcommittee, and that comes now this evening to the village board, and we hope that we can earn the recommendation of the village board to proceed down this particular line. First, I want to introduce our design professional, Mindy Villamontes. She will then walk through the slides and explain the concept that is proposed for this particular project. Mindy?
Thank you, Scott, and thank you, President Herman, for that introduction this evening. Good evening. My name is Mindy Villamontes, and I'm a partner and architect at M. Villamontes Architecture and Interiors. I'm joined tonight by my business partner, Michael Villamontes, and by our client, Ravi of Chic Chef Catering, who are sitting behind me. And we have been working alongside the village now for over a year, and are really excited tonight to be presenting this proposal. So the slide that you're seeing on the screen right here is an aerial of the site. And as President Herman introduced in his slides, what we're showing here in red is the outline of the proposed facility. And I think this slide does a great job of really showing the fact that the proposed facility is moving towards the west. Moving towards the east. And allowing for that pool deck area and those pool facilities to shift. What you're seeing highlighted in the middle in red there is the existing clubhouse facility. And as you'll see in some of the renderings that I'm going to present tonight, we are proposing that that facility actually remain and will be renovated. And the new facility that's highlighted here in red will be built kind of around that. Our proposal does maintain, as I said, the center pavilion structure, and we would be expanding the pool deck, which is shown here to the left, and then also incorporating the existing tennis building that you see on the east side into the facility. So this next slide should look familiar. President Herman already did a good job walking us through it. But just to reiterate some of the points that he had already made, this shows the proposed layout for the new venue and the bath and tennis amenities. To give you an overall sense of scale, we have highlighted the existing facility in various colors here. So highlighted in pink, or kind of that orangey pink color right in the middle, that is the existing facility that we see. To the left, highlighted in blue, are the existing pool amenities, which are being shifted over and then expanded to the south. Highlighted in green, which would be maintained, is the existing pool equipment area. And then yellow is outdoor space that's currently to the north towards the pond from the existing facility. And then you see over at the far side in that teal color, that's the existing tennis office, which is a standalone building right now, but would be incorporated into the new facility. And then as was pointed out previously, One of the big eyesores of this facility right now is that outdoor loading dock area, and that's the primary thing that you see as you pull into this facility. So that's highlighted in that bright pink color to the south, and that is being proposed to be walled off and incorporated around where the new catering kitchen is located, so that that's not visible as you pull into the site. We've got several renderings here up on the screen to give you a visual. I really enjoyed seeing the historic photos that we saw of Paul Butler's. So again, this facility was envisioned to be a brick structure. It is painted white, giving just a really clean, updated backdrop to it, but at the same time, really showcasing really classical design that would be timeless. The upper slide is taken from that circle drive as you're pulling in. And what you're seeing in that sloped view of the roof structure is that existing clubhouse that's beyond that would be re-roofed. Out in front of that is a new colonnade that would be constructed. And then the canopy structure, which is there right now, it's a very heavy kind of overscaled structure for the building, would be reconstructed as a much lighter structure. To the left, again, I'm looking at that upper left rendering, is the entrance to what is the office space right now, which currently exists, but you currently enter through the facility. Moving over to this rendering that's on the upper right corner, this is just a closer view, so you can be, as you're pulling under that center canopy, you can see again that roof line of the existing structure that's beyond. In the lower left, showcases the entrance that would be to the new pool facility. So one of the things that we're doing is really kind of creating separation and creating a lot of clarity with how the pool works. There's a new pool manager office and check-in counter that would be kind of to the left side of this rendering as you enter. You're getting little hints of what is the new pool cafe, which right now is located on the north side of the site, is moving to the south side. And one of the reasons for that is to not only allow for those better views out to the pond and to also have better circulation there, but that pool cafe, which currently only serves the pool, would now be able to serve the tennis courts as well. So we've incorporated into the design a little counter that you could go up to on this side without even entering the pool facilities to allow access to that cafe. And then down here at the lower right corner, we're now on the other side of kind of that trellis structure that you're seeing on the left rendering. We're now in the pool facility area. And you can see the expanded pool deck in this. We're seeing that outdoor cafe structure. You're kind of seeing through the trellis structure, which would be that center drive, which would have access serving both the pool and the tennis facilities. And then a final slide kind of the pool area before we go on to other areas. And this is looking again towards the south, really showcasing that expanded pool deck. One of the other things to point out here is that access into the pool right now creates a lot of accessibility issues and doesn't have a lot of clarity. So really creating a much cleaner access into the pool. You're not seeing off to the left side of this is a series of ramps that would take you down for accessibility, but making much better circulation in this area. And then, of course, we've already talked tonight about the new and remodeled locker room facilities. There's actually 3 locker rooms that are proposed as part of this project. There's a completely renovated men and women's locker room, but also serving those families that do have young children. There would be a family locker room that would be accessible to them. So again, just overall layout for the new facility. This one has the colors removed, so it's a lot easier to read. Again, to the left-hand side, we're seeing all of the structure. It equates to about 6,000 square feet that's being built out specifically for the pool facilities. In the center, kind of very clearly defined, is that existing clubhouse, which would be maintained, renovated, re-roofed. You're seeing the additional banquet facility, which is kind of shifted, but again, overlapping on the existing footprint. And then on the far right side, we can see where the new tennis office would be incorporated into the overall plan. So it's a separate building, but attached to this. And as already mentioned, it will have 2 restrooms serving those tennis areas. I'm going to turn it back over to Scott, and he's going to conclude our presentation this evening.
Thank you, Mindy. I know that the village has put quite a bit of time into this analysis, both the study of the problem, the study of the history, and the different methodologies available for resolution and options for the village board to exercise. I know your subcommittee has recommended a public-private partnership between the banquet operator and the village. Those are delicate, they're hard issues to document, but they can be done, and they are done all of the time. Public-private partnerships are a very successful means by which the village can basically dedicate tax revenues to what they do best, and you can have a private entity that essentially is helping finance the operation of the facility. The tricky part is that you have to have a private operator that has a long enough period of time to recover the funding that they put into the project, and yet the village has to have the liberty to terminate the operator if they're not functioning fairly or delivering the type of revenues that the village wants. So the documentation is difficult to pull together. Where we are at in the process, we are very, very pleased that Chic Shack has received the recommendation from the committee. We know that it's being presented to the village board to get their feedback and see if the village board agrees with that committee's recommendation and the reasoning as to why. There are additional steps that will have to take place between now and I think your next meeting is scheduled for June 10th, and there would have to be additional details that would have to be put together between the public and the private partners for this particular application. But we are pleased that we have earned the trust of the subcommittee. We hope that we can earn the trust of the village board and proceed towards that next step.
Scott, anyone else presenting from your group? Okay. So at this point, we can engage in board discussion, and if there's questions to ask of the Chic Chef team, we can do that. Trustee Jane, you wanted to start? Do you want to put up your slides now, or do you want to?
Yeah, could you put it? So as firstly, thank you so much for presenting, Chef Team. I did not mean to offend anyone, but I think we as residents, as a board, have a philosophical and a strategic question, because I think the problem we're trying to solve is Oak Brook Bath and Tennis. We are not here to create a banquet business unless necessary. But the challenge is we have a lot of passion for our sports court and Oak Brook Bath and Tennis. So I wanted to focus on that, and then when we come to the banquet, and then we can go in. So I didn't mean to offend anybody. And secondly, thanks a lot for President Herman, Greg, Mike Stelzo, and Joe. We had a detailed meeting, got a lot of the data, and the first time I had tons and tons of information. The objective of my conversation, the theme here is we are here to solve a problem, which is our passion and our jewel, which is sports court and Oak Brook Bath and Tennis. We're not in the business to create a banquet business. I don't think we started that way. We started off saying, we have a challenge. We have an Oak Brook Bath and Tennis. Our residents love it. We love it. Let's make it viable. Let's make it thriving. And that's the challenge we have. So I want to speak to that challenge. And if we come to the fact that we have to create a banquet business to solve that problem, we'll talk about that. But my thesis here is that we don't have to. We can solve the problem without getting into the banquet business or getting into the details, and I would like to share that option with you. So as I set the stage, I think sports court, we all agree, is a crown jewel, and we residents own it. Nobody else owns it. We own it. The sports court has multiple assets. It's not about the banquet. It's about we have a golf club. We have bath and tennis, as you all know. We have soccer fields. We have a library, the salt barn. We have a prairie land out there. There are 20 acres of prairie land which people can experience. We just got the tree award, right? We just shared. We are getting award. Look at the trees around that 20 acres. We have beautiful property. Not only is that 20 acres of prairie land and walking areas we as village and residents can enjoy, it also connects into the ACE campus through a bridge. We may have to fix it a little bit, I guess, but it does. So we have a huge area. And then we have a pond and beach, and all this connects, like I said, to the ACE or the old McDonald campus. So that's the asset we as the residents own. Now, I have spent a lot of time. I'm not an expert in developer. I'm not a real estate. My colleague here has run a banquet business and has developed. And I've heard kudos from him, from President Herman and Mike Manzo. When I was running for election, we have a Chicago Tribune write-out on his and his wife. He runs a banquet business. He was not even involved in this decision, which I found surprising. But nevertheless, I had the opportunity to talk to some of the developers who are in the community. I talked to many of the people. I talked to tennis players who play on that clay courts, who also play on other clay courts in other clubs. And I've been members. I've talked to residents, and I've attended all the committee and subcommittee meetings. So this information I'm sharing you is not Naveen's perspective, but it is the collective knowledge that I've acquired through all these interactions. So one of the things I've learned is that there's a lot of passion on our tennis courts, which honestly, I'm a tennis player, but I didn't know. But people love the location of it in the wooded area. People love the fact that the clay courts are hard to find and very differentiated and are unique. And everybody loves it. I get that. We all get that. There's a lot of passion on the pool, and it's the only outside pool besides our house pools, the Midwest Club, and the Lifetime business and the fitness. The Park District does not have outdoor pool. Understand that, and people like the idea about the pool and like I said, the tennis court. So that's not an argument. Oak Brook Bath and Tennis has consumed a resource in the past, and in the future requires capital investment. We all get it. That's not an issue, and it's not budgeted for. We got it. But our goal, the challenge we are here to solve, from my perspective, and I talk to many of my residents, is to enhance and preserve these assets in a way that enhances our property values, because we want to create something that makes wisdom to create enhanced property value and provides higher opportunities for community engagement. I saw the numbers President Herman shared. The fact of the matter is, as of today, and these are your numbers, only 63 households, not if there are 5 people in a house, they become 5 members, right? I'm not talking about that. Only 63 households out of how many households? I believe we have 3,300 or something close to that are members today. We want all 3,300 households to engage with this. This is our asset. This is beautiful. We don't want 63. Even if we grow it by 35%, it will be still how many numbers? Still 10%. That's not the challenge we're trying to solve. We are trying to have every resident in our Oak Brook engage with this asset that they own. That's the challenge. We want that experience, and consistent with the sports core as a thing. We're not here to build a banquet business. We're not in the... So that's the thesis I want to kind of follow on, and I'll show the economics around that. I'm a business guy, so my colleague will talk about the legal aspects. We have Ed Tezinga, who knows about the law, the other dimensions of it, much more history, and Jim Nagel knows everything else, and they will talk about that. But I'm giving you an economics and a business perspective, and a different perspective than you just heard. Can you move on to the next page? So before you start, I can create any model to prove any thesis you want. It'll take me 5 minutes. I can change assumptions, and I'll prove any thesis you have. So I said, okay, what are we estimating? What is the concept? What is the vision? I could not get it. I sat through the sports court committees, all the subcommittee findings, and I talked, but I didn't know what is that pool $8 million representing? What is it included in that? So I started to look at that, and then we heard benchmarks in the board meeting and the subcommittee. Oh, Clarendon Hills spent $8 million bond on a pool. And I said, what was this Clarendon Hills development? I didn't even know about it. So I went and I researched. I looked at every document Clarendon Hills has published. I looked at what was the vision and how does it match to our vision. I looked at our 20-year capital plan, and I said, what is really included? So here's my insights, which I want to share. So there's a village estimated plan, which President Herman shares, which is $8,331,875. That's their number that they shared with us. Now, when I started looking at it and dissecting it, is what does it really include? What's the vision here? I started to see there are a lot of new things. There's a splash pad, which costs $950,000, and in 20 years it will be $1.9 million. We are building a zero-depth pool. We don't have it today. We are now enhancing it to a zero-depth pool. we're going to build some new water slides with the pool, which I'll give you some of these numbers in a second, which are detailed numbers. So I said, oh, wow. So we're not here to make what we have new or maintain it. We are developing something here. So that triggered my questions. Who decided this is the vision? Who approved that vision that we are going to build a zero-based depth pool? We're going to have a water slides with depth pool. We will create this splash pad and so on. And then I started talking to all the people I talked about. And I said, you know, we have this banquet hall. You've lived here for 30 years. And I looked at the 2016 study, and there's one column that I'm not an expert that attracted me, which says, when is this due for replacement? You know, there's a usage life. And I looked at that, and it says the windows are good till 2035. There's, you know, they had these years when things have to be replaced. And I started saying, hey, we're not just tearing it all down. The windows are fine. They were replaced in their life is till 2035. That's per their study. And I say, maybe, I don't know what else do we have to be changed. So I started talking to builders. My neighbor is a construction director. He talked to his colleagues. I talked to so many people. And everybody is coming up and saying, hey, if we just change what we have today, nothing new, no zero-based pool, no fancy water slides, no fancy thing. We build a locker room. We have the changing room. We build the check-in. We fix our pool so it's sustainable long-term. And we fix our, you know, the two pools. And we're not building cabanas on the pool side, on the thing. We just fix and make it sustainable. They're giving me numbers somewhere around $5 million. Maybe it's underestimated by $1 million, but look at the range of variation from 14 million to 5 million. Now, who's right or wrong? Jim is an expert. We are other experts. We can get bids. I have not seen any bids. But the numbers I was getting were very highly, the variation is too huge. So I don't know which is correct. But my assumption was we are only fixing what we have. We want to make that sustainable. We're not building new stuff which nobody has approved. We have not had any referendum. We have not created a vision of slides and zero-based pool and this stuff. So if you're fixing what we have, let's talk to these people and let's validate this number. It's too huge a variation. So I raised the question, what are we building? What are we even talking here about? Are we building Clarendon Hills? Can you move on to the next page? So I went to the before I get to the Clarendon Hills. So I started looking at the capital plan that's in the document you all have. This is not comprehensive. I just took some numbers to illustrate. So the dive pool, which we will have with 2 diving boards in Aqua Club, $1.4 million. Children's splash pad, it has only a 10-year life, so in 20 years we'll have to do it twice. So the number for there is $950,000 for one time, so 2 times, you multiply by 2. Competitive swim plus zero-entry pool is $3.1 million. Refresh beachfront, cabanas, etc. is $550,000. Water slide plus splash pool, $437,000. Parking lot refurbishment, and then there were a lot of other numbers. The point I'm making is very simple. Do you all know what are we voting for? I didn't know what I was voting for. I want you to understand what is on the table. So this is on the table. So then I started looking, sorry, it's rotated. Then I started looking at the benchmark was Clarendon Hills, right? They did an $8 million bond and they built the whole area. So this page, and you can go on the Clarendon Hills site, all this information is right there, published on the website. This is the whole development that they're doing in that $8 million bond area, okay? I'm going to show you some pictures which kind of go to the next picture which says, so this is the Clarendon Hills water slides. This is what they're building. Yeah, are we building this or whatever we're building? Next page. This is the splash pad Clarendon Hills is building, right? This is what in there. So then I went and said, okay, look, if you go to the next page, it said, what is the cost estimate? So they're spending splash pad $1.5 million. We had 900 something odd number. They're spending $1.25 million in the lap and leisure pool renovation. They're spending, so, you know, there's some numbers. And so I started looking at our numbers, looking at the experts, looking at this. I am just confused. What is the vision? What are we estimating? Is apples and oranges? So I put together a plan B, C, whatever you may want to call it, which says we can make this what we have today. For $5-6 billion, we can make it come alive, fix all the problems, not have a banquet, and use that banquet as a community engagement thing. We can have yoga classes, we can have other stuff, we can do whatever. People can walk around the pool, the prairie areas. What's our vision here, guys? You are residents, you own it as much as I do. Please, you have to communicate. So I started putting that thing together. Then I started doing the economics of it. I built a 20-year plan. And I used their numbers, right? The only difference, so the point I want to make is 3 numbers will make all the difference in the decision. 3 numbers. The first number is your capital investment required. They had $14 million, including the building, $8.3 million only for the pool. I'm saying that the total investment from what we have today, from what I have got from all the experts, we can do it around $5 million. Fix everything, and if you look at that, we won't have a banquet facility. We can't do a 300 people wedding. No. We can't do that, right? But do we want it? But can we have a picnics out there, or you could have, take your families and have a party out there and have it. You could do all that stuff. You could have yoga classes. You could have an engagement center. So the capital investment is number one decision variance. $5 million versus 14.5, right? And I would argue we never would set out to build a Clarendon Hills like, Lions Pool development. I mean, unless you guys approved it, I have not seen that before. So I put that number as one number. The second number is the revenue number. So the whole banquet facility of Chick Chef business is generating what for us? $625,000 a year average. $625,000. I'm not even questioning what they projected. This is their projection. $12.5 million is just a if you take $12.5 million divided by 20, you will get $625,000. That's the revenue generating. This year, we made $400,000 on a golf course net profit after spending $1.1 million in capital on the golf course. And I was talking to all the sports core committee members. We have 8 sports core committee members. I've talked to many of them and said, can you help me understand? They said this $1.1 million number was high because this year, we were doing our driving range investments. And by the way, this is after $500,000 transferring to the village for all the general expenses of people and everything. All that is accounted for. The net profit of the golf course, if I'm wrong, correct me, was $400,000. Is that correct? If anybody wants to
I'll correct you when you're done.
So, yeah, and then I was said, no, it's not 400 because we have to take the surcharge and move it to the general fund. So that takes it $250,000 we have to move to another fund. In my naive business, we are making $400,000 profit. Then I said, well, we're making that today. We made $1.1 million in capital investment. After that, we made $400,000. And now Art and us, we talked about investing in our driving range. We're investing a huge ton of money. And when we built the business case for a driving range, our goal was to have $200,000 to $250,000 in incremental revenue from the driving range, because we made huge investments, right? So I said, okay, so the golf course profits can be somewhere around $600,000 to $650,000, okay? And that's as of right now. And so on the numbers we have talked in the board and everything else. So I assume we are going to make $600,000. And then I was talking to some of the sports core committee members, and they said, Naveen, this $1.1 million capital that we spend this year is very high. We typically don't spend this much money on capital on the golf course, and we don't need to. This year was high because we invested in the driving range, we invested in other things, which at the parking lot or something, and they were unique. But in the future, we don't need that much capital. Now, we can argue, somebody said we need more, I'm talking about this is the sports core committee members who know this thing telling me this. This is not Naveen telling you that. So there is a wisdom that exists within our board which says $1.1 million and this $400,000. So if we are making $625,000 from Chick Chef, per year, I can already make $600,000 for my golf course. So what's the difference? $25,000 for that? We want to create a banquet business and change the vision? Maybe you guys want to do that. I'll be all for it if you all want it. So the difference is $25,000. Yeah, there's a philosophical difference that we have to use sports court as one unit. That's a philosophical conversation, right? But I would argue that we have enough money to, so when I build this model, and this is for them, for their thing, I use exactly Melissa's numbers that she shared with you. I have not changed that. I have, only difference was their maintenance cost was $30,000 less than the other model. I missed that one, so my numbers are inaccurate by $30,000 I just calculated. But other than that, if you look at the numbers, I know this is very small, but I have a spreadsheet. I'll send it to everybody. You can play with the numbers. Whoever wants it, just send me an email. I'll send you a spreadsheet. You can play with the numbers yourself. The difference in the third number that matters. So the first number that matters was the capital. The second number was this revenue, about 625 in golf course revenue, because you can take, I don't make money from golf course, obviously the decision is out, right? Or we say, hey, we do make 600,000. That's the second number. The third number that is differentiating between the two is that in their model, they assume that if we do all these developments, we will grow our membership revenue over 20 years by $3.8 million. So if you understand, what does that mean? That means we will grow our membership in that Oak Brook Bath and Tennis by 30%, right? So, and if we do that, we will generate additional $3.8 million in revenue. So that also is factored, right? So the only difference between the golf course, us funding through the golf course, and funding through the banquet is $25,000 difference between the golf course and the Chic Chef revenue profile, plus this $3.8 million, and maybe another $100,000. That's it. So if you don't believe in that, the incremental $3.8 million or over 20 years of income, think that they're basically the same cases. Not much difference in that too. Then that's the third number that matters. Then I said, well, let's be creative. Let's be innovative. We want to make this area for all the residents. We own it, right? So I said, only 63 households use it today. What if 3,300 households pay $200 a year, say, this is for us. We don't want any non-residents into this area. This is us. We'll pay $200 a year. You can make more money than you are making money from the membership today. I repeat, if every household, no, I have to finish my story.
I know, can I?
Everybody got the time? I need the time.
Naveen, I'm just going to respectfully ask you to wrap it up soon so the other trustees can
That's
speak.
fine.
That's all.
So I'm saying there's a creative way. So the point to be made is the banquet revenue is only giving us $625,000. We're making $600,000 today from the golf course. And yeah, we won't put surplus surcharge money into the general fund. Yeah, we're not. But it's generated by the golf course. We can do at the lower capital investments. Can you move on to the next page? So I've given you the summary over the things. I can make this document available. I've already shared most of this thing. But the most important thing for us is to understand the concept. What are we here debating and voting for? Unless we all have a clear vision of, you can't debate apples to oranges and make a decision. So the vision, I try to articulate what I have siphoned out from you. We need to understand that. We need to understand the variances. We need to have experts like Nagel and other builders have bids, and whatever concept we finally decide we want to do on, and then go forward and make decisions. We're not ready, nowhere near any decision making. Next, go to the next page. So my suggestion on the path forward is there, clearly this. We need to clearly articulate what we want in Oak Brook Bath and Tennis. We want a Clarendon Lions development with cabanas on the beach and massive water slides and splash pads for $2 million over 20 things. I mean, if you want, we want. I'm not debating it. I'm just telling you what exists in there. If you want all these bells and whistles, then we might have to change a decision. The second is we need to really understand the capital requirements in more detail. Because when I look at the 2016 study, when I combine it with the cost of building that banquet facility is estimated at $450 to $500 square feet. This was what we talked about that. When I talk about that number with any builder, they laugh at me. They laugh at me. Now, maybe they are biased or something, I don't know. I'm not a builder. But I'm saying we need to understand what is really the cost of what we want. And the third point I want to make is we need to slow down. What is urgent here? Why did we even jump into this thing? We never even discussed it. We just all of a sudden want to make a decision. We're not here to work for Shikshaf. We are here to work for Oak Brook Bath and Tennis residents. I'm not here to support their want a decision fast, so I have to make a decision fast. I'm sorry. That's not my role as a board of trustee. I am here for the residents. And I'm saying, why are we rushing into this? We know what we want. We know what the passion of the village is. There's a time urgency, is self-inflicted wound. We need to engage. We need to get the vision clear. We need to get the capital investments clear. We need to really figure this out. And so I submit that there is a plan C, which is a viable plan. We don't need to create a banquet business to solve our problem. We can solve our problem. I don't even call a problem an opportunity. And we can engage instead of 63% or 63 households growing by 30% to 3,000 residents. Just by a simple thing in saying every resident contribute 200 a year, we get everybody engaged. And we can solve every problem we have here. So please, let's take the time to think creatively, step back, let's not rush, and make a decision appropriately.
Thank you. So what I hear you saying is you support perpetuating the pool and the tennis facilities, as a lot of people do. There's been some people that advocate for tearing it all down. You support continuing those. You made comments about some of the suggested design features of a new pool. That is all conceptual. There's no vote on that. I don't even know how many years off that is. As I said before, the pool could fail tomorrow, could fail in 5 years from now. When we get to the point of failure, we will certainly have very robust discussion about if we're going to replace it, what it's going to look like, and what it's going to cost. These are numbers that were put together by experts based on what is common practice today. Obviously, zero-depth pools are, what they do today. There are things that are done differently today than they were 60 years ago. You talked about, okay, we keep it open, how do we pay for it? Very legitimate debate going on here tonight, that's gone on before tonight, that will continue to go on. How do we pay for it? Yes, we could take money from the golf course. Yes, the golf course is more profitable last year than it's been in the past, thanks to the work we've done to eliminate the mismanagement, to eliminate the theft. Golf results, though, ultimately are seasonal. They're weather dependent. And frankly, they're dependent on demand, which shifts over time. Right now, post-COVID, golf is very much in demand. I can't tell you where it's going to be over the next 20 years. So I can't tell you if we're going to be able to be as blessed with the kind of profitability we've had last year and hopefully we'll have this year. What I can tell you is that the numbers that Melissa presented are based on a capital study that's been done of all the capital that Sean has weighed in on that is expected to be needed to the golf course over the 20 years. Yes, I acknowledge the fact that their reasonable minds may disagree on exactly what components that need to be done, but suffice it to say, the golf course, the sports core, and throughout this village, there are decades of deferred maintenance. So yes, we seem to be rich. We have $45 million in a general fund. This village is plagued with deferred maintenance. I would suggest let's not be too flippant to say let's just use golf course profits. That's my 2 cents.
Can I make 2 comments on that? The same variability in golf profits is also true for Shikshaf. So the Shikshaf model is based on a $5 million business today, which I can't verify because I can't see the sales tax numbers. They have a $400,000 banquet on-site business and apparently $4 to $4.4 million catering business, which is my guesswork because nobody will tell me the number. So their financial projections are based upon a $5.4 million business in year 1, growing to 14-point-something $million business in year 20. So their same variability, they may not make that money. It stands true for golf.
Yeah,
and the second thing is...
But if they don't, to be clear, and all these documents are in the packet, everything's available to you. What's in the draft agreement with Shikshaf is that if they don't produce those numbers,
Right.
There's a formula that says that they have to, if they don't produce 80% of a trailing 5-year average of the numbers, projections that are in the agreement, we have the right to terminate the agreement for cause. What that means is the $8 million building or whatever they spent on it, we own, they walk, they deal with their lender. It's our building. So we do have protections.
And then we get into the banquet business as a village, right?
We have a
So-
brand-new building.
We're out of the banquet.
I'd rather take my chances with a brand-new building.
So
than
anyway,
that.
you have the facts. I think the village.
Right. The other thing I want to point out about, we got to be very careful about construction numbers because everyone's a construction expert. What I've learned since I've been in the village role, because I'm shocked too by what we have to spend on construction in this village, but we're subject as a public entity in Illinois to all sorts of things that you are not subject to when you build a house, the most significant of which is something called prevailing wage. Our legislators and our state government have mandated that we pay union scale wages to everyone that does something for us. That's what prevailing wage is. So, yes, you could build something for $2.5 million if you're private, but it's going to cost you twice that if you're public. That's just the way it is. It sucks. So, all right, let's move on. Ed, do you want to, let's get the folks online first before we lose connections. Ed, do you want to jump in?
Yes, I like to compliment Trustee Jane on his presentation. I think it was very well thought out, and it sort of incorporated a lot of things that I had thought about at the conceptual level. And his gift as a consultant retired from Accenture is that he can speak in spreadsheets. That's very powerful. And same thing for Trustee Martin. I appreciate her spreadsheets. The one thing about the analysis in Trustee Martin's spreadsheets that I was a little puzzled about is the idea of having to pay back with interest the money sourced from the village, and then sort of add that to the burden of the business. I'll sort of pass on to just being complimentary to to Naveen's spreadsheet, because I think it's very, very helpful. I think the numbers have been pumped up to try and drive a decision here. The capital improvement plan only says 9.4 million. That is payable at, $500,000 a year in 20 years. And Naveen has shown where we can get the $500,000. I think there's nothing sacrosanct about the golf profits. What we're being told is to swallow the assumption that it's better to use non-resident weddings to make money than to use non-resident golfers. President Herman accurately pointed out the very low resident membership rates of golf. That makes golf an even better target to harvest some of the $1.5 million a year out of golf to take care of the sports core, because they're 5 fingers on the same hand, all these sports core activities. I know former Trustee Adler will probably get into that in his remarks. The idea of having to look at the least powerful piece of it, the B&T, and say you're not allowed to have any help from any other divisionalized activity, because the golfers will get mad if we take the money. The non-resident golfers don't really have a say in that. The board of directors, the board of trustees are the ones who decide that. And my firm conviction is that it's just as viable to take money from non-resident golfers than to create an amped up banquet business to take money from non-resident weddings. So that's one of my points. The other assumption that I'd like to make clear to everybody is we keep talking about Chic Chef having a lender. Right now, Chic Chef does not have a lender. In the documents that are in our packet, there's not even a number for them to get a loan against. As I've circulated in my memorandum sent to each of the trustees and to some of the members of the community, we're being asked to sort of enter into a teaming agreement that says we're going to be your exclusive partner with Chic Chef. But it's kind of being sold as if it's already a contract to develop. But as Attorney Scott Day says, it's not there yet. It's a very, very complicated process to get there. But we're being told that they already have an investor. They do not have an investor. Ravi himself does not have an investor. We were told that he had someone by the name of Patel who was the investor. Today I learned by email with our village manager that Patel is not sufficient as an investor. They don't have a bank. They don't have a Canadian teachers pension fund like Heinz had when they built the Commons. They're just talking to some friends, and they want to assign this whole deal to a new LLC called Oakbrook Events LLC. Why do they need to do that? Because we're told they need to have a new LLC to raise capital from a bunch of independent investors. So this thing has gone pretty far away from the idea that, hey, our superstar caterer has a money man who can just make this happen. Well, let's look at the document. The document never uses the figure of 8 million, but our propaganda pieces that have gone out to all of our residents proudly say we can get $8 million. There's no enforceable obligation to get 8 million. We're told that this whole agreement has to be passed and then assigned right away to Oakbrook Events LLC because it's a financing consideration. But there's nothing in this agreement that is in our packet tonight that even has a number in it. What kind of a lender would look at an agreement without a number in it and say, we're going to use this to give you your financing? Anybody who does commercial lending knows the commercial lender needs to see every little thing nailed down. It's not there yet. We're talking in suppositions and presumptions. So it's really premature for people to start assigning this exclusive teaming agreement to Oakbrook Events, which right now, and as I looked at the Illinois Secretary of State website, there are 2 managers of Oakbrook Events. Neither one is Ravi. There are 2 other gentlemen. A manager-managed LLC is controlled by a manager. So Ravi has lost his control already, even though he's the key guy we're supposedly trusting. Now, I know Scott Day is an excellent lawyer, and I'm really glad he's involved, because if anybody can make this make more sense, it would be Scott Day. But he doesn't have the tools here, and we don't have the tools here. We're just on 2 teams that are being told, let's have an agreement. Well, I am one of the trustees on one of the teams, and I have zero foundation for what is really in this agreement because all of the key terms are completely missing. It basically says, build us something with these rooms in it. There's no enforceable term in here at all. I am against this project because of the reasons Naveen stated in his alternative spreadsheet analysis. I favor a more Spartan, restrained type of a sports core. I don't think we need fancy locker rooms. We don't need couches and TVs in those locker rooms. We don't, the people I talk to who play tennis say the courts are in fundamentally good shape. They just need very good ongoing maintenance. So we're being scared with the number of $800,000 for immediate replacement of those courts. It won't be immediate. It's all over time. So for those reasons, I'm very skeptical. If I lose, and if this goes through anyway, then I would have a lot of oversight insistent points that Mr. Day would hopefully be able to work out. But we're headed to a very arduous, time-consumptive, very expensive process to have an adequate public-private partnership, all for the result of putting up a big building that also has to be taken care of. You can say, yeah, you'll kick the operator out if he defaults, but now you're stuck with an albatross. And again, you're back in the business of milking out-of-state wedding guests when you could have just harvested out-of-state golfers. So I think it's way premature. Ravi's only into the first half of his 3-year agreement, which expires in 2027. I hear he has threatened to say, well, then I'll take my banquets elsewhere. Well, North Avenue and Lake Street are full of vacant warehouses and big box malls. I say, have at it. Go ahead and have banquets out there, but everybody knows the attraction is the pond and the woods. Those are the things that people like for the pool and the tennis. The tennis players tell me that the solitude and the simplicity of the woods is already being impaired by the noise from the current operation that Chic Chef is doing. So to amp it up and make it bigger, make it glitzier, make it more persistent, will degrade the gestalt of the whole place for the pool and the tennis people. And that rounds me back to the point of Naveen, which is we are here for the residents. And I don't agree that we need to solve the problem with the deus ex machina of the presumed banquet facility that flies without numbers, that is being proposed without a lender, all sort of on a hope and a wish. So that concludes my remarks.
Thank you for, among other things, pointing out the chicken and egg issue here, right? You're saying you have no specificity, you don't know who the lender is. Well, the lender doesn't know if they even have a deal. So this is a chicken and egg issue that we are working constructively together with to narrow in on a product that could be viable. So yes, some of the things you pointed out, that's part of the process. That stuff will be worked out. You made a comment about Melissa's comments about paying back with interest. I think the point she was making is that you take $10 million out of the general fund, that's at 4% interest, that's $400,000 a year, 3% interest, $300,000 a year of revenue that is currently in our general fund operating budget. So now you've taken away $300,000 from our annual operating budget every year. So that's what she was trying to point out by that message.
Yeah, and that's interesting, but when we put money into the police pensions, we don't say you got to pay it back with interest. When we pay for roads, we don't say, hey, road, you got to pay that back with interest. It's a use of the operating fund.
I understand. I'm just saying that that's part of the equation. I'm not saying,
Yeah, but it's put there because it's designed to make everything else look too expensive.
I understand, and we are having a debate here about, ultimately, I think, how to pay for this thing. So I'm not saying that it's not legitimate to talk about taking money from the general fund. You just have to understand the consequences. I'm not saying it's not legitimate to talk about taking money from the golf course. You just have to understand the consequences. That's what we're talking about. Trustee Nagel.
Thank you. Hey, I want to say, earlier today, I had a great meeting with Larry, Michael Castaldo, and Greg. I really enjoyed that. It's been very contentious the last month in town. Friendships have been frayed. We agreed on some things, we didn't agree on others, but one thing we did agree on was after this meeting, whatever happens, we're going to have a drink and still be friends.
Under our liquor laws, you'll be shut for the night, I think. We have a 12 midnight liquor license closing, I think, so.
And Mike, I hope you can join us, Mike. I really do. Having said that, I didn't find out about this until the day after the election, and my first reaction was, hey, you can't do it because of the deed. And I shared all this with these guys today, and flash forward to our swearing-in ceremony, Neil Cerny was here. We were talking briefly, and I see Scott there. Neil was with Maribel and Kincaid, Joe Maribel and John Kincaid. I was with Korean Hero. We were at the old courthouse. Neil, our law firms had a lot of cases together, got to know these guys, great lawyer, fantastic judge. And we were talking, he said, what's the local hot issue? I said, oh, they want investor wants to come in, put in millions and run a private banquet business. And Neil said, you can't do that. And Neil's father he grew up here. Neil's father was the village president. And he had the same reaction I did. Unfortunately, when I said it, people immediately assumed, hey, Jim, you're doing it, and by extension, my wife's doing it, only because it's a perceived conflict. And I'm glad Ravi's here tonight to help me straighten this out. The fact of the matter is, when he has, whether it was him or the public, and we referred a lot of weddings over there or events, we, the Drake, make money because we have hotel rooms. So if there is a conflict, I'm voting against. If I'm against it, I'm voting against my financial interest. But I just thought it was very clear because of the deed. And I'm glad, Larry, I think it was a great presentation with Paul Butler. And when you look at his whole presentation, it wasn't just the sports core. He built the shopping center, which was our business district for private and entrepreneurs and businesses to come and conduct business. In this, he could have given to his kids. As a matter of fact, I think Michael Butler tried to operate a business there, and Paul said no. He wanted it to go to the village residents. And that's clearly stated in the deed, and that's been my position all along. But I'm glad Ravi is here tonight, because I'll be honest, it's been going back and forth. I don't know what the deal is. I heard he's going to put in, and maybe I can ask you, Ravi, you're going to put in $8 million, or let's start with the deal we have now. You're paying 15% of your gross revenue?
Everything's in the agreement.
Yeah. Plus 10,000.
Great.
10,000 rental.
Can he step up to the podium, please?
Yes. Scott, would you want to step up?
Yeah.
I prefer to ask Ravi.
Well, the terms.
Been attacked enough.
The terms that
Well,
are.
hold on, because under our laws, we got to be sworn in. I know we had to do it, Scott, when you represented me, but I'd prefer to ask Ravi, have him sworn in.
This is not
It's not a hearing.
public testimony. This is not how it works.
It's exactly
Not a
how it
commit,
works.
that's not a committee meeting, and it's not even we're not even voting, Jim.
Not a
And I don't know where you're going.
No, I, when.
This is a discussion item, Jim, you
Village
know
Attorney,
that.
would you please answer the
It's
question?
not a hearing, Jim.
You
could-
have-
He could,
you
he
have a
represents Ravi, you could ask him.
In terms of where the agreement is nowhere until this board.
No, the
approves.
agreement that we have in place now.
The agreement that you currently have in place was executed in 2023. You've got a license agreement that was
No,
negotiated.
I voted on that. I aware of that. My
Understand.
question is, how much has he paid us on that?
Under the old agreement, I don't have the accounting for the old agreement.
You'd agree, Scott, that we're trying to pick numbers out into the future, and the best forecaster of future numbers are past performance. So
Well, I
what
think
has he
what you're
paid
trying
us?
to do.
I think the best predictor are the numbers that he's willing to commit to an agreement that says if he doesn't meet them,
Well, Larry,
we get
it's-
to pull,
it's-
we
I-
get to pull the plug.
Larry, I'd appreciate it. This is my time. I have some
I
specific
understand. You're asking a
questions.
question. You're asking a question.
Yeah, to them, not to you.
Let me try to answer the question. In terms of where you're at in the process, you've created a subcommittee to look into this entire process. and
Wait, I'm going to reclaim my time. Let me just, let me, the best, we've got all these forecasts, okay? And another reason I expressed this today why I was a little upset. And Scott, you know this. If you come to court and you're going to give an opinion, you have to be an expert, you have to be qualified. More important than the opinion is the basis of the opinion. So the basis of my opinion today, just as if Suresh was here, he could give an opinion on an MRI film, on a CT film. I can't. But on a banquet business, trust me, I can give opinions. I am more than qualified. And I'm just trying to figure out the deal. And I don't understand it. And I haven't been brought into this. And Scott, they're saying he's your competitor. I told these guys today, you know who our competitors are? Every Monday I get judged against the other Marriott Autograph. The Cosmopolitan, the Atlantis. So he's not my competitor, but I'm trying to understand the deal. The applicant's here, he's a tenant or a licensee now. I'd like to ask him some questions. And I think this is his opportunity to take to the stand and tell all of us, I did this, you were my attorney when I was here, Scott. I had to come with a PUD, and this was for my property. This is for the residents' property. This land belongs to us. It only seems fair that he should take to the stand and tell us what his plan is. How can I make a judgment? And I haven't ruled it out, and there's a lot of questions, and you'll appreciate this, Scott. This was the same comment I had with these guys today, was, there might be a lawsuit. Someone threatened a lawsuit like it was a four-letter word.
You did.
My feeling is, you know what? This is a legal issue. I truly believe the deed that runs with, the restrictions that run with the land prohibit it. And I don't think if you asked any trustee here, hey, do you want to breach the restrictive covenant, no one would say yes. So if it does end up going that way, and we have to decide, then all this is moot, and we don't have to have all this contention. But if a judge, or if it does get to that, or if we decide, yeah, we're going to go forward with it, then I want to make sure this is a 30-year marriage. Look at the life expectancy of this board. All of us will be dead by the time that this marriage ends. So this is a long deal, and trust me on this. I've done, the basis of my opinion is 1.5 million square feet of property, every asset class in this country, 1 million square feet of property that I've developed in Europe, and now we're about to develop another 1 million square feet in Africa. More important than the deal, more important than the location, more important than the numbers is the partner that I'm going to be with. And I've learned that the hard way. And I know you'd agree with that, Scott, because you've been in this business for a long time. So this is our opportunity. He says he's going to put $8 million in. It doesn't make sense to me from a banquet. And is the deal that he pays himself back at 5.5% interest? Is that the proposal?
Can I answer the question?
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much. In terms of where we're at in the process, you have gone through a structure that our client willingly participated in. The village went out and solicited different avenues and viable approaches to trying to deal with this critically important asset. It's quite possibly the single biggest real estate asset that the village has, and you've had it for close to 50 years. So it's an important recreational amenity, and it's an important part of the culture of this particular community. That's the starting point. Now, the village went out and they solicited concepts and proposals from multiple sources, and we weren't the only ones involved in the process. There were others that were solicited as well. We happened to be...
Were they solicited?
Please let me finish.
Well, were they
Mr.
solicited for the construction or just the banquets?
Jim, you asked, Ron interrupted.
No, it's
No,
my-
no,
it's-
no. It's-
this
it's-
is- I'm reclaiming
I'm the
my
chair of the
time.
meeting. I would like Scott Day to finish his sentence, please.
So with this process that was solicited and request for proposals that were published to the entire world as to how you were going to approach this series of problems, Chic Chef came forward and made a proposal to the village as it relates to this particular project. And the village didn't consider just that proposal. They considered every proposal that came in from multiple sources. And you assigned a subcommittee to try to evaluate this and go through the numbers and the analysis and try to figure out which of the avenues that were potential would be the best one to recommend to this body that you're here with tonight. Now, at the most recent meeting, I know that it came down to the proposal that had a private vendor that was already employed by the village and had been functioning capably at this particular location. So you had a known commodity. And what that vendor came to the village and said, this is what I think the site needs in order for success of the banquet element. And you got the banquet element, you've got the pool element, you've got the tennis element, you've got all of these separate elements of this particular project. We are one piece. And Chic Chef came before this particular board and made the presentation to your subcommittee. Now, your attorneys and the people working on behalf of the subcommittee said, look, this is an interesting proposal. We've got to know more about this. How are we going to deal with the payments? How are you going to recover your investment in this property? You as a private vendor, if you're going to put $8 or $9 million into the investment, you've got to at least have an opportunity to extract that. But we're a public institution, and we've got to have public use of this parcel of property, and we have to have governance through the village board. So it's a classic public-private partnership. Now with that, we are here before the village board this evening, and you can tell your subcommittee has done quite a bit of analysis and research into the financials, and they've tried to share all of that with you. But understand where we're at in the process. We don't have an agreement that you've approved. And an agreement that has been drafted by an attorney without the village board going through each of the individual numbers on that, that's not here yet. You're going to get that if the recommendation of the committee is accepted and a majority of this board says, you know what, we think this is the best avenue forward. Let's get all of the details that Trustee Nagel wants. Let's get all of the details that Trustee Tazinga wants. Let's put this stuff all in black and white. You can find out how they're going to finance the investment in this. You can find out where their money is coming from. You can find out all the individual elements of this particular transaction. We're trying to get to the very step that you are saying you don't have and that you don't know, and you don't have enough to vote on it. But in order to get there, you have to accept the recommendation of the subcommittee and say, we want to move to the next step with this. Bring it back to the trustees when you have all the financials laid out, you've got all the specifics and all of the numbers are there. We know what you're going to do that's going to be public events, what we are going to provide for the things that we have to do to make sure this is a public institution. Let us get all of that stuff in a format that you can digest. And then I think we can set aside these different numbers. That's the element of what the agreement is. We are here, we are proposing a public-private partnership. Your committee is satisfied that we are the best proposal for this tiny element of this particular asset. We'd like to move forward with that. If you want to address the legal issues associated with private restrictive covenants and all the rest of that, I've got a binder that is probably 6 inches of paper on all of the case law associated with private land use restrictions, which are not favored in the law. Your attorneys have done a remarkable analysis of that particular area of law, and I think that that they can satisfy you that they believe that the village can go ahead and do this. There are elements. I can't address golf. I can't address tennis. I can't address your swimming. I can't address the 200.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but this
open
goes well beyond my question, and I don't want to be here all night. So I just got some really quick questions. This answer goes well beyond my question. So let me just reclaim and just ask some really specific questions. Is there going to come a point in this process, since the numbers are all over the board, where your client's going to take to the stand, raise his hand, take the oath, and answer questions from this board? Yes or no?
He will submit where the numbers are.
Will he come? My
just-
question
no,
is he
Jim,
going to
I
come
wanna-
in and answer
I want-
questions from us?
I want to ask you a question. You're asking about the revenues, right?
No. I'll repeat
Asking
my
about
question
revenue.
again. I want to know if there's going to be a time where this board, like every other case for land use, whether it's a PUD, a variance, or anyone else, that the applicant comes in, raises his hand, takes an oath to answer under penalties of perjury, and we get to ask him questions. You would agree, Scott, that we have that obligation to the residents?
No, I would agree
that's
that
not how it works.
in terms of negotiating public-private partnerships, and these things are all over the place. You've got public-private partnerships in virtually every.
Okay, so he's not going to testify.
What I'm saying is it's not a criminal investigation, it's a contractual arrangement.
Scott, that's a very quick quip, but you know that when I testified here and everyone else, when it's my land, we have to answer under penalties of perjury, and it's in our code. If there's land use, it's involved. So it's not. So it's just a simple question.
In a zoning hearing. That's
Okay,
what
but-
happens. If you want
Zoning hearing.
Attorney Castaldo to
Can I
weigh in
ask
on
Scott
that,
a question
that's fine.
on your behalf?
No, I want to.
Let me write it down.
You asked questions about revenues.
Okay, so the question is, what's the deal now as it stands right now? If we're sitting down at the bar, hey, I got this great deal in Oak Brook, what's the deal? I seriously, I'm not being facetious, I'm not being cute, I don't understand the deal. As it stands right now, what's the deal? He's going to invest $8 million, how much of that does he get back?
Jim, it's in your packet.
Yes, this was sent to everybody.
Packet.
This was
Read
sent
the
to-
packet.
Well, why?
There are the numbers.
Why is, if he's going to be here, why can't we ask him?
Because it's in your packet.
What, I'm not allowed to ask questions because it's in the packet?
You didn't
It's
open
not,
it.
it's not, as he said, it's not a criminal trial. You're asking questions about revenue streams and so forth. It's in your packet.
Okay, well, we've just heard 2 spreadsheets. I want to delve into it a little
His
bit.
year-by-year revenues are in your packet.
I don't understand what the deal is. I'm asking very clear questions. The residents want to know. This is our land.
Read your packet. All right.
All right, next question.
Larry, oh,
Scott,
sorry.
you said that this is the process.
Jim, stop. Melissa's alarm is going to go off very shortly to wake her up. Before that happens, I want her to have a chance to speak. Melissa, please.
I won't take up too much of anybody's time. I just want to make it quite clear that in my role in this working group, what I presented today was my best guess from the information that we could gather. And thank you so much to Joe and to Greg and to Sean for putting this together. It wasn't intended to advocate for any particular position, but to really give us some information as to where we would be financially from those. I will say that we did put in state-of-the-art facilities in terms of the redoing the pool, not Band-Aid patches and fixing what's there, but really having to start from the ground up again. And so I stand by that in terms of, I think that if we're going to invest in the pool facilities, that we really need to invest in them the way that they are commonly occurring in surrounding areas today. I am excited to hear from the public comments and the remainder of the trustees. But like Larry said, I do have to work today in only a couple of hours. So I'm probably going to log off. I do think there are many unanswered questions as to the terms of the agreement. And it's my understanding that that's not exactly what we are here to discuss today, because they aren't ironed out. And so I think there are many questions that Trustee Tazinga brought up, that Trustee Jane and and Nagel have brought up, and I am looking forward to hearing those. Again, I'm really looking forward. I can't see the audience. I don't know if there's anyone still there, but if there are public comments, I'm really looking forward to watching those back as well. So thank you all for engaging in this discussion, and I look forward to where it sends us out. Thank you very much for the time, Larry.
Thank you for sticking with us. Trustee Manzo. Mike.
Thank you for waking me up. Yeah, I'll before I make my comments, there's a couple of things I did want to address, some statements that were made. This village board decided to get out of the catering business, not into it. This is getting us out. The chef got us out of the catering business. We got out of operating a restaurant bar. We were in that business. We were losing hundreds of thousands of dollars every year because we were involved. We were not landlords. What we were was operating at a loss, our two restaurants, of Banquet and the restaurant. So we got out of it. And I wanted to say this too, because we need to get on track. What we're here for is, do we move forward with this proposal? That's the question in front of us. And before I get into the rest of my remarks, I just have to say this. I have to say it, and how disappointed I am, and we need to do better. Sports Court Committee meetings where audience members are yelling, screaming, outbursts while we're trying to take votes, while we're better than that in Oak Brook. Attacking someone who's done nothing but help the village of Oak Brook, a caterer, trying to attack them at board meetings, in public, in social media. It's unacceptable. We could disagree, but to attack people, to go after people, and yes, there's hurt feelings. Trustee Nagel says he hopes that we can get past that. It's difficult. It's difficult when he threatened to sue the board and sue individual trustees that don't agree with him. Of course, I'm upset with that. We can disagree. We can disagree on topics. We can disagree on topics. We can absolutely disagree, but we don't have to be disagreeable. And here's basically, I've quietly waited as everybody filibustered, and I will just give you the comments that I have. First and foremost, there's been a lot of talk about projections. If the projections don't work as President Herman said, then we can cancel the deal and we get a brand-new facility that we didn't pay 1 penny for. Parking spaces. Since I've been here, we've been attempting to expand parking lots. We just expanded the golf course. We have been doing that. We just never had the money, and they've always been deferred. Now we have the money. Now we can actually do it. The deed. If the deed is a problem, and then all of our operators, then we close down the sports court, because we have operators at golf, we have operators for the banquet, we have operators for the bath and tennis, we have pros for golf, we have operators throughout the sports court. So if it violates the deed, then we shut down the sports court. We don't shut down the banquets. The deed isn't for the banquets. The deed is for the entire sports court. So I don't agree with it. I don't think we're in violation. Something that never gets mentioned. This is the 4th time we are doing this to this particular building. This is not the first time. This is the 4th time. We've done additions, we've done remodels. This is the first time we're not paying for it. That's true. That's the first time that we've had extensive meetings, multiple meetings, board meetings, sports core meetings. We've had 5, 6 meetings to discuss it. No other village president ever did that. We built the salt barn. There weren't any meetings. We did an addition to the golf with the patio and the bar. There weren't meetings. There was an item on an agenda and it was voted on. President Herman wants to do it differently. He wants to hear from the public. He wants to interact with the public. He wants to discuss it with the public. Kudos. Kudos to him for that. But we've never done this. So this idea of rushing it through, no, in the past we rushed it through. In the past we did. Not this time. We are not rushing it through. We have gone through it thoroughly. And as we said, if we agree to move forward, then we will have an agreement. And in that agreement, we'll decide what we like, what we don't like, and if we can accept it. I'd like to go back to when Larry Herman, Jim Nagel, and Suresh Reddy were first elected, and Sports Corps, as it always is, was a contentious issue. And they did state that Mr. Herman, Larry Herman, was going to shut down the sports corps. And he said, no, I'm going to save it. And it sounds like a campaign promise to get elected. Well, he's doing it. And how did we do it? How did we go from having a drain on our cash reserves? And I want people to understand, the way this was operated is we gave them, over the years, millions and millions of dollars. We took it away from our police. We took it away from our fire so we could pay it to the sports corp because we couldn't pay our bills. We had one-sided contracts. We had an agreement with the Park District where they took 100% of all our revenue for Bath and Tennis, but leaving us the repair cost. That's what the previous board advocated for and agreed to, which means guaranteed losses, losses that have to be subsidized by cash reserves. But then the Park District, and I don't blame them, they got a great deal for the Park District, horrible deal for the village, said, by the way, I want you to throw in 100% of the revenue for soccer. And you know what that board did? Yeah, we'll give you that too. And we'll keep all the repairs. We got rid of that contract. We had a Tasty Catering contract. We were subsidizing Tasty Catering. We were doing all the legwork. We were hiring staff to book events for Tasty Catering. Tasty Catering was making money. Guess who wasn't making money? The village of Oak Brook wasn't making money. We were losing $200,000 to $250,000 every single year. And we said we're going to turn it around. We did. When we went out to bid, even members of our sports corps committee says, that's not going to change anything. You could bring in new operators for the banquet and for the golf. We're still going to lose money. Well, guess what? The results are in. They were wrong. They were dead wrong. In the banquets, we turned around approximately $400,000. We went from approximately a $200,000 loss to a $200,000 gain in 1 year. In 1 year. Nobody thought we could do it. In golf, forget about the numbers you looked at golf because they were a joke. There was so much theft and waste and corruption in our golf course, we don't know what we were making. There was no real inventory. There was no audit. We came in, we said, we want an audit done. We found out we probably lost somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000 over the last 10 years. And that doesn't even count all the free drinks that were given out. It was run like a clubhouse. Now it isn't anymore. Those are real profits you're seeing. And we're even allocating salaries towards the golf course, towards the sports court that we never did before. And even with those allocations, we're still making money. Now we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to save our B&T. And there was a statement of, well, we can make $600,000 with golf. Why do we need it from the chef? Well, why not make $600,000 with the chef and golf? Doesn't that make more sense? Why is it, it's not mutually exclusive. We can make $600,000 with golf and we can make $600,000 for our banquets. Our banquet money can go to fix the pool and the tennis, and golf does have a lot of problems. All the maintenance in golf have been deferred. The sand traps, the golf cart routes, if one of the generators go out when we flood, we have major expenses. And we had money reserved for the flooding issue. Unfortunately, we had to take it to do the expansion, so we have to build it back up. But what's been done here in Oak Brook, and I've been here since 2011, and all I kept hearing from former elected officials is we have an ordinance that says we have to be self-sufficient. Now we finally are self-sufficient, and we want to keep this jewel for future generations. And how we do that is, I believe, with this once-in-a-lifetime deal. This deal may not be good for certain trustees. It may not be good but it's good for the village of Oak Brook. It's good for the future of the sports corps and the future of the B&T. And you could play all the games you want with these numbers. It isn't going to change. Nobody wants to talk about it. Subsidizing it with cash reserves and golf profits, that's what we stopped doing. That doesn't work. Why would we go back to what caused all the problems? Why would we go back to subsidizing the sports court? It makes zero sense. And with the numbers, the two best options, it's very simple. Either the private-public partnership, or if you guys can find a donor that wants to write a $15 million check to the sports corps, good luck with that.
Mike?
I got to wrap it up. Everybody went long.
I know. It's 3.5 hours in. We still have public comment.
Well, I'll speak during public comment, but at the end of the day, I believe this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to save the sports core. I think it needs to be looked at. We need to vet it. We need to look at the details. But where we are right now is, do we go forward? Do we go forward and try to put something together to save the sports core? And I think that we owe it to the people of Oak Brook and future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Let's go with public comment. This board still has a closed session tonight, so I'd like to move on to public comment. Those who wanted to speak about this issue, who did not speak earlier, please call it.
Jacqueline Cantori. Okay.
She signed up?
Elaine signed up too. I have Elaine on the list.
People left by this time.
Hi, my name is Elaine Zanis, and I live in the Village. I'm speaking on behalf of Jacqueline Cantori. She couldn't stay longer.
Elaine, you're speaking for her, not for yourself, right?
Yeah,
Okay, because you were signed up to speak for yourself, too.
I didn't get here until
I'm sorry, are you,
taken.
so you're not going to have two slots? Are you?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Me too?
No.
So sweet, Michael. Okay, so St. Isaac's is having a graduation or an end-of-year celebratory party at the sports core at our swimming pool this Friday. The swimming pool, as we've heard countless of times, is on the verge of disaster. And she wants to know, should she cancel that party? She's got hundreds of kids coming. She's awake. She's probably still watching, and she wants to hear what we have to say. Or wait, staff or maintenance people or something.
Okay, is that your comment?
That's the question that you would like
Well,
an
it's
answer
public
to.
comment. I'll, even though we don't normally do this, I'll answer. I don't know. I've said it could fail tomorrow, it could fail in 5 years. I don't know. That's why we're here talking tonight, but.
Does anybody have
any
any
other-
confidence?
Yeah, we're not, this is not back and forth. You know that? You and I constantly have this debate here at these meetings.
Sure.
You're a former trustee. You know how this works?
Yeah, I do.
Do you have any other comments within your
But you
3
know,
minutes?
people like to hear it back and forth.
We're not having that. That's not how it works. We all want to go home.
Sorry, it's not about the people.
Okay. We want to go home. This is the public comment section. Elaine, you know that. You're a former trustee. You do
Okay,
this all
so
the time.
the answer remains, we don't know.
Correct. Thank you. Next speaker.
I'm assuming Joe Cantori also went home.
Next speaker. He's gone.
Elise Gaddis.
Yes.
Pass.
Kathy Pascalidis.
Pascalidis.
Sorry, Kathy.
Thank.
So is that everybody here?
Hello, my name is Kathy Pascalidis, and I live in Ginger Creek. I am a resident of Oak Brook. The Village Board has a unique opportunity through its relationship with the current banquet leaseholder. This represents an $8 million investment. As Village President Herman noted during his State of the Village address, and also the last issue of my Oak Brook Village mailer that came last week, upgrading the bath and tennis facilities will be a significant undertaking, something that the Village Board should quote, not kick the can down the road. With the current leaseholder's proposed investment and partnership with the village, we can finally address these costs in a sustainable way. This could mark the end of borrowing funds from parts of the sports court to maintain the bath and tennis. It would allow the village property to properly care for the pool and tennis courts without continued subsidies from the golf operations, something that's long overdue. While a few individuals, for whatever reasons, personal interests, what may be their motives or their intent to sabotage, they continue to circulate misinformation.
Just
They even
please be careful about attacks on anyone.
Okay, sorry. They even continue to circulate misinformation. They even go as far as calling for a referendum. But many residents, once presented with the facts, come to fully support this opportunity. They understand that the improvements are funded by private investment. The village retains ownership, and the long-term benefits become clear. To most, it's a no-brainer. I thank and I urge the Village Board of Trustees to continue supporting this promising opportunity, something that will benefit our entire Oak Brook community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker?
Don Adler.
Who's after that?
I don't know if Dwight's here.
No, Dwight's not here. Ray? Ray's not.
Good evening, everyone. At least I'm not saying good morning to you. Wasn't sure how things are going there for a while. I'm Don Adler, 35-year resident of Oak Brook. I was a trustee from 2013 to 2017. During that period, I had liaison responsibilities to the sports corps. So I've had a lot of experience with the sports corps. I was also a finance liaison for 2 years, but I asked too many questions. So I was short-term with respect to my tenure as a finance liaison. Government by the people, for the people, notable phrase, describes the essence of democracy. Lincoln in his Gettysburg Address referred to this. So yesterday, as I was pondering this on Memorial Day, those words struck me. When we remember all those who have fallen in wars in the history of our democracy. This matter before us presents once again the issue of government by the people, for the people, in our little democracy of Oak Brook. The sports corps is our land. It's our crown jewel, as it's been described. And the village's significant monetary reserves are our money. Our money. All of it's our money, and it's our land. The use of these key resources has to be a decision, and it is critical that the processes around these decisions have impeccable integrity. We have no need to rush a decision on this matter. I have participated in this village process with respect to the proposed Chick-Chef deal. I think I've attended all the meetings that were available to me. We aren't anywhere near where we need to be in terms of integrity of process. From what I've seen, this has been a perverse process. On April 8th, there was a village board meeting. The deal was on the agenda to be approved. It was an action item on the April 8th agenda. The bullet was in the chamber to be fired, so to speak. But all resident comment basically was against the deal. I think the village president was on his heels in that meeting. He claimed that it was only a discussion item. It wasn't a discussion item. It was an action item. Anyhow, then April 29th, then the matter gets referred to the Sports Corps Advisory Committee. The April 29th meeting was referred to. It was chaotic. There were 2 questions that were presented in that meeting as to what was to be voted upon. Then there was formed the Sports Corps Advisory Subcommittee, which those meetings were not open to the public. And it delivers an analysis, which you've seen. I'm 45 years a CPA, and I honestly don't understand this. Okay? I've tried to understand it, talk through. There's no words that go with this. Okay?
Don,
So,
can you?
my bottom line is
Wrap it up,
this. This process, from my perspective, isn't working. Okay? So we've got to stop the representative democracy process, and we need to go direct. We've got to take
you.
this to the people, and we need to have a referendum on
Thank you for your
this.
comments. I think Ray Cheska, you're the last one. Yeah. It's 10:45, trying to stick to the 3-minute limit.
Talk about respect, okay?
Don, we have a 3-minute limit. The rules are very clear. We're trying, it's 10:45. This board has another meeting tonight.
Flyers, I got this Friday.
Don, please have a seat. Please have a seat.
Yeah, please.
Remember how I introduced, please no attacks on the board.
I'm Ray Cheska, longtime resident of Oak Brook. On a warm summer day in June, Johnny Miller and his 2 close friends from school, Kathy and Tommy, all 10-year-old residents asked their moms permission to ride their bikes to the bath and tennis to spend most of the day swimming and having fun. The moms agreed if they all go together. Each mom reminded them to be careful and stay on the bike trail. They were excellent fourth grade students, and they gave their moms a sense of security that they would. They all met at Tommy's house, and off they went. The bike path was empty, and they rode along laughing and the passing cars and called out when they saw a cyber. They were having fun. They arrived at the entrance just off of Oak Brook Road and turned left onto the beautiful tree-lined road that leads to the bath and tennis. They continued to laugh and enjoy each other's company as they rode abreast of each other. They noticed such a dramatic change in the noise level. It became quiet, and they could no longer hear the passing cars or landscapers rushing off to their next house to cut the grass. Suddenly, behind them appeared a 40-foot food service truck delivering food supplies to the banquet hall. The truck sounded the 500 decibel horn and startled them to the point that they did not know where to go. And in that other direction coming were 3 catering trucks trying to get to a client's function on the other side of Oak Brook, followed by a returning beverage distributor and a fresh fish supplier. There was no place to go but off the road and into the ditch. They walked their bikes the rest of the way. This is real. My question is, did you take into consideration the safety of our young people? I would not send my grandchildren along that path if I knew it was going on. Would you? It is not a place for a commercial building that does not belong in a recreational area. Secondly, the beautiful environment of the tennis courts as it exists today have trees and grass. This was brought up by a former Hinsdale Central tennis star at one of the prior meetings.
Ray, I'm going to ask you to wrap it up, please.
Yeah. You are going to change the environment dramatically by looking over a parking lot instead of grass and trees. I know the offer looks attractive on the surface, but it is not what the residents want.
Ray,
Yeah.
please wrap it up.
Okay, wrap it up. Yeah, there is a petition going around with 200 signatures and counting against the project itself. So I'm asking you to table or reject the offer regarding bath and tennis and let them finish the petition to get the residents' input.
Ray, thank you.
Keep residents
Ray.
first in our thinking and planning. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, we normally have board updates at this time. I'm going to ask, it's getting very late, we have a closed session. I'm going to ask the board's indulgence to pass that and ask for a motion to adjourn to closed session for the purpose of discussing minutes of meetings lawfully closed under this act. 2, to consider litigation probable or imminent or pending against, affecting, or on behalf of the village pursuant to sections 2C21, 2C11 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act respectively. May I have such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Jane?
Yes.
Trustee Manzo?
Yes.
Trustee Nagel?
Yes.
Trustee Tsinga?
Yes.
Trustee Martin?
Yes.
She's still here.
Okay, motion carries. Are we going to adjourn?
There is no further open session business tonight, so the meeting will adjourn from the upper level conference room following the closed session.
Thank you all. Thank you to our staff. It's been a long night. I appreciate it. Thank you to everyone who stuck with us. Thank you, thank you.